Hey everybody, how's it going? It is Annette the Peacemaker from YGRL, the Yang Gang Report Live on Facebook and on YouTube. And so today we are doing another episode of our Unity edition. Oh, good timing. Okay. So we are doing the Unity edition, and today we have some very special guests from the state of Texas, and Faye is the one that got these guests for us. So I am going to have Faye introduce everybody that is on the screen with us right now.
Hello, everyone. So today I'm very, very pleased to introduce you to two lovely people who are running for office for the Congressional District of Texas 5, which is my district. They're both running against an incumbent that I prefer not to even say his name, but I think his name is Lance Gooden. And I believe that both of these candidates are going to be, really excellent human beings and excellent representatives. So I want to give them a chance to have a conversation with everybody and talk a little bit about what their plans are for our country moving forward. So the first guest we have is Kevin Hale, who is running as a libertarian, and Carolyn Salter is a doctor, a medical doctor, and she is, it's time for a doctor in the House. She's going to be looking for the Democratic vote here. So let's have our conversation. And also we have Nate, who is here as a staffer. So I hear a lot of noise on the line. So if you are not speaking, one of the things we can do is hit that little mute button.
So now, Faye, you are muted. You are muted.
So, okay, I actually have a little thing on my mic where I can push the button. So I'll just be using that if you don't see me muted. So, okay, I guess one of the first questions that we usually talk about, right, because we're Yang Gang edition, the one thing that kind of unites Yang Gang right now is the idea that we might have a universal basic income to help us have a baseline for all people that is not like this current safety net we feel like has holes in it and you might fall through. A lot of times people don't qualify, or for the means testing is too difficult for them even though they do qualify, or there's just so many different reasons why somebody might not get the care that they need and that we've actually approved in our country. And so we want to find out how you feel about how each of you feel about that. Do you want to start us off? Dr. Salter, do you want to start us off? Oh,
sure. You can also just press the space bar on your keyboard and it will automatically mute and unmute you. So that's kind of a nice little trick I learned the other day. Works in Zoom too. So I really don't know a great deal about the UBI except what Faye has told me. Faye's a huge advocate of UBI. My major concern, since I'm fiscally very conservative, is how do we fund that? Where does that money come from? And I'm not sure that I really understand. Now, assuming that's great, I can understand how, especially in rural areas, that if we don't have a pandemic, it could be a real help in injecting money into rural economies, because so many people here in East Texas live below the poverty line. Especially, I'm most familiar with Anderson County, but a lot of the people here live below the poverty line. They have trouble making ends meet. They can't afford transportation. Healthcare is not that accessible to them. Medicaid was not expanded by the Republicans, and so people have a lot of trouble finding healthcare. Generally, kids have Medicaid, but if you don't have easy access to transportation, it really makes it difficult to get to the doctor's office, and we don't have bus service here. We have a Go Bus service here from the East Texas Council of Governments, but and that's getting a bit better. But it's something you have to generally in the past have to have a 2-day advance notice, and I don't know if anybody's ever had kids before out there in the community, but a lot of times kids don't give you 2 days notice that they're going to get sick. So you do have to make sure that you can figure out a way to get to the doctor's office. And for a lot of families, that's a real struggle. So the UBI would help with that. It would help them make co-pays and deductibles. And if they were wise with it, they could build up basically a safety net, because a safety net of their own, a little personal safety net, so that a lot of people are like one paycheck away from being in deep, deep trouble. They can't, if their tires, one of their tires goes out, they have a flat tire and they can't get to work. It could mean that they lose their job, and they can't afford to fix the flat tire, and they don't have any friends that have cars. So that can be a real challenge. So just things that a lot of people who are even slightly more affluent really don't have to worry about from a day-to-day basis. But I'm a physician. We see patients in my office, and all the time we have to go, okay, we'll have to reschedule your appointment. And a lot of times there are fees associated with that we end up waiving, because people, we know they can't afford them and they can't afford to get their tire fixed. So we go, okay, we'll just make it okay and move your visit off to when you can come. So, I mean, those are just two small instances about how, little things like having a flat tire or having a sick kid can put an entire home into chaos, financial chaos. And I can see how UBI could, allow for a little bit of a cushion, because we know that people, when they don't have enough money, they're very stressed, and it increases the risk of depression, and micro stresses like that increases the risk of all kinds of stuff like heart disease and high blood pressure, and of course depression and suicidal thoughts. At sometimes some people will actually commit suicide because of financial issues. So I can see how it would be beneficial. I still, it has to be paid for some way. Nothing in life is actually free, so we have to figure out how that works. So I want to step aside and let somebody else talk. I could probably talk the entire hour, and I don't want to overstep my bounds. Thanks for listening.
We're happy that you're here with us, Carolyn, and hopefully you can stay for as long as you have energy for us, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, Kevin's going to give his answer, and I'm not going to butt in at this time.
I think we sold Dr. Salter's resume a little bit short. She is a former mayor of Palestine. I think we need to give her some props on that. Also,
not only a former mayor, but the only female that we've ever had as a mayor here.
I didn't know that.
2 terms, yes.
I didn't know that. So there you go. Even stronger resume for her.
I'm not sure being a woman's really a resume point, but okay.
Well, the first one is certainly. Being the first one certainly is. So congratulations on that. I'm glad that she actually has experience in government, whereas I'm just a salesman that's trying to do this. I have spent the last 4 years reading economic books and political science books and history books, getting myself prepared for this. The thing I like about UBI, and I'm kind of for it and this is a big if, and Carolyn, you asked about how to pay for it. How about we get rid of all of the rest of the welfare and only have a UBI, and we lose the administrative costs that are associated with what you talked about, administering these systems and programs that sometimes don't catch everybody, like you talked about, Faye. That's how we can pay for a UBI, by saving on the administrative costs. It cost us a lot less to just cut a check from the Treasury than to have people check off boxes in a building somewhere where we're having to pay rent and their income and their retirement and all of these things that we just keep piling on to our great-grandchildren at this point. At this point, I say taxation is theft because they just keep printing the money. So if you're going to keep printing the money, you might as well just stop taxing us. One of the things that
I'd like to speak to.
one of the things
I just wanted to speak to.
would
Never
help.
mind. Never mind. I'll wait till you're done.
Yeah, you can. We'll come back to that, but let me finish this point real quick. One of the things that we can do to help the working poor and the middle class is not to tax them federally at all until they reach $42,420 in income, because that allows them to give themselves a safety net, provide a savings account, because we basically have taxed them away from having that money. If we don't tax the poor like that, they will be able to build a foundation of wealth by creating a savings account and an emergency fund, and with the tax dollars that they aren't getting stolen from them immediately. Now go back to your point, whatever your question was. Annette.
Let's go to Annette.
It wasn't so much. It wasn't so much a question as it was a statement.
Yeah.
So I am disabled, and I live. So I'm a stage 4 terminal cancer survivor. Right. I had a 1 to 5% chance of survival. I'm basically a medical miracle. Like, right. I should be dead, statistically speaking. But I'm not. And so I'm disabled now as a result of permanent side effects. The chemo disabled me more than the cancer did. Okay. So anyway, and so I get SSDI, and my husband quit his job as a full-time truck driver to become my full-time caregiver, and he is unpaid. And then we won a medical malpractice settlement. It was like negligent medical malpractice. So because the doctors that I was seeing before, they let me go 4 years with symptoms of cancer, very prevalent symptoms of cancer, like blood in the urine. As it turns out, I had bladder cancer, and they kept treating me for UTIs and kidney infections, and they just kept, giving me antibiotics and sending me home. And that went on for 4 years until it became stage 4 terminal and I was near death. So we won this malpractice settlement, and with that money, we bought, with cash, a 5-acre ranch in southern Arizona. We did that because we were already living in poverty before the settlement. We had a horrible landlord. He was just like a despicable human being. And I swore that I would never, ever pay rent to another landlord again as long as I live. So our number one priority was buying property that we didn't have to, I'm never paying another landlord again, So we did that, okay? So my husband is our caregiver, and my 70-something-year-old mother, I lose track of her age all the time. She's in her early 70s. My mom is also disabled and in declining health. She's elderly. She's been recently diagnosed with diabetes, the high blood pressure. She had a heart attack, small stroke, and got diagnosed with diabetes all like within a week. Like everything just happened all at once. So now my husband and I help take care of my mother, who lives on the property with us. And my mom gets Social Security. So you would think that all of those things combined would qualify us for something as simple as food stamps. And it did not. It does not qualify us for food stamps. So my mom and I are both on Medicare. My husband does not have health insurance at all. Oh no, we just signed up. I'm getting to it. Okay. So my husband did not have health insurance until very recently. And the first time we applied for food stamps, they gave 3 people $50 a month for only 3 months for 3 people to eat on. And I was like, okay. So, and then with the
there's your argument right there for UBI. That's the argument
Yep.
for UBI.
Okay,
because you
so
fell through the cracks.
we did not, and I had to cry and beg for
Yeah.
those $50.
Exactly.
I was sobbing on the phone. I was, and this woman on the other end, the person working the phone, she felt so sorry for me. She worked some kind of angle so we could get those $50.
Yeah.
So
She
we wouldn't
checked off the
starve.
right box.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, she
Yeah,
did.
but
She
that's
knew how to do her job.
That's the exact argument for UBI, because of all the administrative box checking that you have to go through just to qualify. If we had a UBI, then you would have that cash and you would be free to spend it how you need to spend it. That's what I like about
Yes.
UBI, is it gives you the decision to spend it how you need to spend it. So if
you could qualify
administrative stuff and then switch that money that we're already spending, believe me, this is like the smallest. Let me get over here. The smallest piece of the budget is welfare. So it's not like it's a target for libertarians. We got bigger fish to fry. It's the last thing I want to deal with. But if we are going to do a UBI, can we do it so that we get rid of welfare and the administrative cost of administering these services, and just give people a check and give them so that they can spend it the way they need to spend it?
Because if
so we don't have to jump through those hoops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That government gets in the way of you getting more of the money you need. Think about it. We're paying those people a salary. They're going to get a retirement. What if we cut all those costs and gave that straight to the people that need it?
That's one of the great benefits, but also you don't lose it as you try to get yourself out of your situation.
Exactly.
It will always be there for you, and it will even be there for you if you're doing okay right now, because you don't know what's going to happen next month. A tornado could hit you like it did for me.
Everybody, not just those making a certain number of money, a certain dollar value of revenue. You want it to give to everybody, not just the working poor and middle class.
Well, we're for a universal. So universal means everyone. And that's because you don't really know what people's situations are. You could look like you're doing very well, but you're supporting 5 people underneath you. You could look like you're doing well on paper, but next month you might be considering getting a divorce. So women don't have, the safety to leave a marriage if they're if they're homemakers, for example.
Yeah.
All the money feels like it was made by somebody else. And so you don't have that ability to take it with you. So there's all sorts of issues that happen in society because we don't have that strike fund.
Yeah.
So Carolyn, did you have something you wanted to respond to in Annette's story? Sound?
It's Annette's story is sad, but unfortunately it is not unusual. So lots of people have the same problems that she does. It is I'm a Democrat, and we're the biggest thing we're about is making sure people have social safety nets and making sure that people have adequate health care, which basically the Republicans keep blaming all the Democrats, but they're the ones who have blocked the legislation and diluted Obamacare. So we need to have we need to reimagine the entire healthcare system. But we're just sticking to UBI right now, and I can understand all his Kevin's points, and I don't have a lot to disagree with there. But streamlining, reimagining public policies and social safety nets is something that ought to be happening continuously. And it seems like in this country, we seem to have a lack of imagination for doing things differently than they've been done in the past. It always seems like the leadership, and I mostly am talking about Republicans here, unfortunately, but it seems to be that we are always trying to drive through the rear view mirror and go back to a time that never really existed, when things are constantly changing in this country and constantly changing in terms of situations. Things are evolving, and we need to be able to adapt those. It's a little hard to have have that sort of adaptation when you have 330 million people, but it's not impossible. We've done very, very difficult things as a people before. Right now, we seem to be strapped and unimaginative, but I'm hoping in the fall that will change. And we'll be able to revisit some of our systems and reshape them. I'm hoping for transformation because we need lots of things to change because they're just not helping the majority of people, especially with the continuing pay inequality and the absolute difference in wealth inequity in this country. There's the very, very wealthy picked up, I think it was almost $1 billion in this, while other people are having trouble making ends meet and losing their businesses and their homes and getting kicked out of their apartments and wondering if they're going to be able to eat, losing their health care, and on and on and on. A small percentage of the very wealthy made a ton of money thanks to the Trump tax plan. So that needs to be revisited. I mean, honestly, I was a beneficiary of the Trump tax plan, but I'm so grateful to live in this country, and through an accident of birth, I happen to be an American, and I don't ever mind paying my taxes. It's my responsibility as a citizen. It's my duty as a patriot, and it's my share as a citizen. So taxes are necessary, and if they're used wisely, then they're really an advantage to everyone, and they help us grow our economy and make our cities and communities livable, and make life much more prosperous and happy. If you don't have money, if you don't have access to capital, then money isn't everything, but it's kind of a lot if you don't have it, because the difference between life and death and having and existing
and kind of is everything.
Want. So
I wanted to tie what you were talking about. Okay. I wanted to tie what you said about that, about the fact that we have a disparity between people who have very, very little and people who have a lot more. I want to tie that to something that is happening right now, which is that the police brutality issue that's going on in our nation, and we're really trying to digest it together as a nation. There's a lot of people protesting, and there are a lot of people who are have you been part of the protests? I'd love to hear a little bit about that. But I think that the UBI is actually being pushed aside as being not as important, but it actually is the basis for why people don't have enough. Because in our nation, we can be born into poverty and not own any land, right? And if you don't own land, then how are you supposed to pull yourself up by the bootstraps? You don't have anything that belongs to you. And so you can just be born into a life where you have nothing, right? Whereas, in the past, before colonial times, the Native Americans had a society where there was no way to be born into a landless state. There was always enough space and always enough land that you could, go and do your thing. So I think that's something that we need to address, because that's what Thomas Paine said in the past, that we have to have this agrarian justice, and that's something that he wrote about, one of the founding fathers of our nation. So, Kevin, you said you were at some of the protests. Do you want to tell us about that, Mr. Hale?
That space bar. Thanks for that hint. I went to 2 here in Dallas, and then a one in Kaufman this weekend. The first one in Dallas was just a local girl that set it up. She had about 80 people show up. We walked through the streets, stopped on the corners, did a circle, of course, doing the yells, Black Lives Matter, Can't Breathe, say their names, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. There's many more names, and I'm forgetting them all because there's way too many. The police brutality needs to end. We have to hold police accountable, and there's several ways we can attack this. Justin Amash, the Libertarian congressional guy from Michigan, put forth to end qualified immunity, a bill that's being actually got tripartisan support now. So I'm hoping that we can get qualified immunity passed. Another thing we can do is add liability insurance to police like we have for doctors. I think that would go a long, long way to holding police accountable, because the bad cops will eventually get priced out of a job. Just like it happens with doctors. The bad doctors get priced out, or they can't get insurance, and then they're not able to work. So I think those are two things we can do to help. We can also end civil asset forfeiture. That's basically theft by the state. And end the war on drugs. The war on drugs has killed more people than the damn drugs. We need to attack the drug problem as an addiction issue and stop wasting people's time in jail. 86% of the people in federal prison are there on possession charges and no victim in their crime. That is ridiculous. We are supporting the prison industrial complex with basically Joe Biden's tough on crimes bill. They've built this up over the decades where people are stuck in there for 25, 30 years for having a couple of joints on them. Come on, man. We need to give this power back to the judges and let them use their discretion, because they have intimate details about each of the parties involved in these kind of things. And if it wasn't a crime in the first place, because there is no victim, that's what I think police should be focused on: crimes with victims, which would include theft, fraud, assault, rape, and murder. If police were focused on those 5 things, I think you'd see a lot less problems with police and the community and Black and brown people. And don't get it wrong, they kill white people too. In 2016, the Dallas police killed a man in 13 minutes the same way George Floyd died. So that got buried in 2016, but it resurfaced after Floyd's issue. But those are things that we can do, and I'll yield some time to Dr. Salter. I know she's unlimited.
I'm unlimited in time. I actually have time limits too. So, but as far I've been to 2 protests. I'll just start where you started. One was a vigil for George Floyd a week after he died. Our local Texas Democratic Women chapter in Palestine had an 8-minute and 46-second kneeling vigil for him a week after. And then I went to a walk against racism in Athens around the county courthouse there. Systemic racism is a problem in the country. I'm sure a lot of people don't really mean for it to be, but it's basically insinuated it itself into every segment of our society. And like Faye was saying, if you don't have capital, if you don't have property, it's very difficult to access it. A lot of lenders expect equity, and if you don't have equity, how do you get equity? It was sort of a vicious cycle. So, and it was especially hard for like Black women, for example. At one point in time, women in general couldn't access capital because they had to have their husband's permission. And then for Black women, it was even worse. So it's really important that people have access to capital so they can create businesses and create new wealth. And that systematic discrimination against Black families and brown families where they can't access capital to start new businesses. That's one of the reasons why a lot of them were left out of the PPE, the Paycheck Protection. I'm not PPE. I'm getting confused with protective equipment.
Personal protection gear.
Yeah, personal protection equipment. So the PPP, the Payroll Protection Plan, that was passed as a part of the pandemic when people had to shelter at home and close their businesses. Well, a lot of small businesses, especially minority businesses and rural businesses, didn't have access to banks that were handling that loan. So they have been basically shut out, and they cannot access capital, and they're basically going to go bankrupt. And so we've lost an entire section of the economy, especially in rural areas and in inner city urban areas, that we're not probably going to get back again unless there's some new program for them to come back. As far as the war on drugs, I agree. That was also a racism motivated program under Richard Nixon. That was basically, in the war on poverty, wasn't much better. It was really a war on poor people. When you don't give people much in the way of opportunity except for selling drugs, guess what's going to happen? They're going to sell drugs. So the policy that you see all around us, everything you see is designed to make that happen. So we need to reimagine our policies almost from the ground up, because they've gotten exactly what they were designed to get, which is poor people clustered in rural areas and inner cities, the elderly without housing, without access to food, medicine, or adequate drugs they need for their illnesses. The same thing with lower income people and people of minority status. And so unless we start addressing those issues, we're not going to have a prosperous society unless all of us have an opportunity for a prosperous society. And I also completely agree with the, oh my gosh, I forgot it, the name of it. The confiscated property.
Civil asset forfeiture.
Civil asset forfeiture. And that affects everybody across every class. That is just a takings as far as I'm concerned. So it shouldn't be allowed. It certainly shouldn't be allowed without full restitution and a specific time limit.
Due process. That goes without saying, right? Right.
I know, but people are losing their money and their property without any due process. Some of the most famous ones I've heard about are people who have been coming from and leaving Las Vegas in their truck drivers. They get pulled over and the police just take their winnings, and they hadn't had a chance to put it in the bank yet.
Yeah.
So what else?
Right. If you are black and you have cash in your car, where did
You're
it
a
came
drug
from?
dealer, so they're going to take it. Yeah.
Right,
Basically.
and they tell them, we don't believe you, we're taking it. Have a nice day. I would just
And good
go
luck
berserk.
trying to get it back. Yes. And not only that, they take laptops and stuff when you're going through when you're going through any border now. Any border, you could have a chance of having your laptop confiscated for some reason.
I did not know that. But the cash.
There was a recent case about this in the Supreme Court where the police took a Land Rover from a guy that was selling heroin. The Land Rover was bought via a trust from his uncle, so he could prove that he didn't buy it through through his drug dealings. So he got the damn Land Rover back, but it took him 8 years and going all the way to the Supreme Court. So there is precedent for ending this civil asset forfeiture. We just need to get it as law.
Right. I also I thought that was a good idea about liability insurance for police officers. Doctors don't get qualified immunity, so they do that. But there's one other difference between police officers and doctors, is that we have a state medical board that reviews actions, and if somebody is a chronic problem, they don't just get sued 14 times, they lose their license.
Right.
Without having to be sued 14 times. Hopefully it ends, and if they cannot practice in a responsible way, and that is something that is clearly missing with police oversight.
Yeah.
So I have an idea for the police, which is to maybe not purchase things for them that we don't want them to use. Like if we don't want them to use.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So is there a database? Hold on.
There is not a database on individual officers and what they've been doing, and that's part of the new crime bill the Democrats have proposed. The Republicans.
No, I was asking if there is one I know there's not one for police officers. Is there one for doctors who have been sued for malpractice or have been found, if that is available for the medical field, then it should be also available for law enforcement. I see no reason. If one exists here, then there's no reason why it shouldn't exist over here.
Well, that's generally a state database that you can access to the state medical board. So complaints will be listed in there. Now, there is a database for malpractice insurance, but I don't know how to access that, and that may not be public. But there is definitely, there are complaints lodged against individual physicians. Every state has a reporting system that you can access, and generally you can get it through the open records if it's not easily available on the state board medical site. When you look up the doctor's license.
Cool. Thank you. Wonderful.
That's why we need a doctor in the house, I think, because there's a lot of expertise that comes with it.
Let's put a doctor in the White House. Doctor in the White House. Joe Jorgensen is a doctor.
What now?
Dr. Joe Jorgensen, our presidential nominee for the Libertarian Party. So yeah, she's a doctor of organizational psychology, and my joke is, if there's anything that needs an organizational psychologist, it's our government. So let's elect her.
I gotcha.
So sometimes Annette and I have a little lag. So if there's a little bit of a conflict, if we just hang back for a minute, Annette will get a chance to catch up with us. So Carolyn, I was wondering what you think about the idea of just not buying certain things for the police, which is what the defund the police is sort of about. For me, I'm using the hashtag nerf the police, nerf the government, because I think nerf is a good idea, is like, making it harmless. We want a government that doesn't harm us, the people, right? So why would we buy them things like rubber bullets to shoot at us or, tear gas? Because I kind of align myself with the protesters, even though I'm not on the streets.
Well, I can't speak to every state and how their police are organized. But in Texas, unless you're a strong mayor form of government in a city, then you really can't tell the police what to do. That originates from the city manager. The city manager picks the police chief, and then the police chief hires the officers and oversees them. So you don't have any direct link to the police department at all. You can affect ordinances, and basically they're supposed to enforce the ordinances that they have jurisdiction over, but you can't really tell them how. If they have civil service, then there's also a civil service board that the city manager selects, not the city council, the city manager. And then complaints go through the civil service board, and civil service has a very strict way, and we have a civil service city in Palestine. Not every city is civil service. They are either civil service or not. And different police chiefs love one form and hate the other, and generally, so they come down on one side or the other generally. So in any case, the police are kept at arm's length. And we do have to approve line items now, and we have to vote to approve to accept automatic weapons and whatnot. So a city council could refuse to accept automatic weapon donations, for example. Some of the things that they get that we're not buying, they're donated from the, and it's a little hard on city council to say we don't want something free when the police really would like it for training or whatever. But there were times that it was never happened when I was on city council. But there have been times when I go, why do we even need to consider a SWAT vehicle? That's we don't have a SWAT team. Why do we need that? If we need a SWAT team, we need to ask the FBI to come in, or we need to go to have an interlocal agreement with a city who has one, because SWAT teams are very expensive to train and maintain and equip. So a small city shouldn't have one of those because it costs too much money. We need that for roads and bridges and to maintain our municipal facilities. So
what is the correct level of government at which you would, at what level of government, or who do you go to if you want to ask them to maybe pass a law that says our police people should not be allowed to use these types of toys or these types of military, equipment? I mean, where do you go to give to at what level of government does that happen?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to do it at the municipal level. It's more appropriately for the state level, And the federal level, and I know Kevin's going to understand this, is that at the federal level, so many dollars are given federally to local municipal groups. You can control it through the grant process and the federal approval process for loans if you're taking out a loan for something that you might need. But there are police grants that police departments depend on to operate, especially the small ones, and you can control it through that. You can also, in any crime bill that they decided to pass, you could limit those things federally through their crime bills.
Yeah, exactly. It is like she said, it's mostly at the state and federal level where you see the big time militarization of our police. But that is trickling down into the big cities. Like here in Dallas, the Northeast branch here has fencing around it with spikes that roll out. So they're already in a defensive castle position. And I'm like, you're not supposed to be in that position. You're supposed to be helping us, serving us. And you're acting like you're at war with us. And that's the problem we have right now, is that they've become the tyrannical arm of the government, literally. They're literally stepping on people's throats, putting their knee on their throat, and killing us in the street, which is why you see such a huge backlash right here coming with these protests. And I'm glad it's happening, because now we can start talking about how to fix this problem. And the problem starts with the war on drugs, and it's superseded by this qualified immunity, which is not a law. It's just a judge made a decision to give them qualified immunity. It's not even codified, which is why we need to pass Justin Amash's bill and codify it as not being an out for the police, and then force them to get liability insurance. I mean, also more training on de-escalation would be huge right now. I mean, you have to spend more time learning how to cut hair like this. Look at that. Samantha Sanders did a good job. You spend more time learning to cut hair than you can to be a cop. That's wrong. You guys are the thin blue line. You need to have a lot more training and be far more professional than what we're getting right now. And
you just hit one of Annette's favorite lines here, because Annette happens to be a barber, right?
There you go.
I was a cosmetologist for 30 years, and I had to go to school for 2,100 hours, which equals about 13 months. And I don't know, it varies state to state and whatnot, but I know that I went to school longer than some cops did.
Yeah, exactly. And the cops in Dallas went to school less than half of that. I think it's like 700 hours.
Wow.
It's bad. So doing those things and making them federal, making it go across the whole board, would definitely change the culture of the police. The thin blue line, they keep telling us there's more good cops than there are bad cops. But when the good cops step up and talk about it and go to internal affairs or post something on Facebook supporting the Constitution, guess what happens to them? They get fired. That's wrong. Those are the good ones. And the good ones have learned, just keep your mouth shut because I need this job. And if we did these things, maybe the good cops finally would weed out the bad ones.
I wanted to check in with Carolyn. Do you still have time to spend with us? Because,
Sure.
okay, because we can sometimes go pretty long.
Yeah,
So
well, I probably need to leave in about 15 minutes. Is that okay?
okay. Yeah. So we just wanted to make sure that we're not, we're giving you a chance to take off if you need to. So Carolyn, here's another aspect of the things that I was thinking about, which is what if we repurpose the police to become the listeners? For example, just now I had the problem that I feel that the police are using weapons that I don't even want them to have, and I don't even know who to ask. Who do I talk to in our government in order to ask them to stop buying those things with our money, right? So, so I'm wondering, can we repurpose the police to do something more like walk with us hashtag sort of gathers this idea up, is that the police are working with us as community, as part of the community. And when we have a problem, they're there to listen and to amplify our voices by finding out, well, who should this complaint be passed up to? They should have an administrator come take down your complaints, just like if you got your purse lost. If you lost your purse, they take it down. But then, who takes our complaints to the right people in the government? Because we don't know how to run the government. We just know that there's a problem.
Well, it really is hard to it's hard to complain about the police, it's hard to complain about too much in municipal government. There's really not a complaint system the way that it's been developed in medicine. Where if you have a complaint, you write the state medical board. So there's not an overriding board, and by the way, there's not for the press either. So there's very few. I can tell you about that, but it's a long time ago and it's a different story. But I do think that there generally needs to be a way for citizens to input, and the general way that people's input just is to go to the city council meeting and talk during the open session where they get 3 minutes. You can also write letters to your mayor, letters to your city council, and letters to your city manager and to your police chief. So that letter writing can help. I encourage people when they have complaints to write to the agency heads, whoever they are, and put it down in writing. It's much more difficult to ignore something that's not in writing. If you just call up and leave a complaint on a voice machine, it's easy to just get rid of that. Also, I don't know if you know this, but every meeting of city council, not the state legislature or Congress, they have different rules, but in city and county government and anything below the state legislature, they have to have open meetings, even during budget hearings. So it's boring, but you could go listen to everything that goes on in a budget meeting, and you can request copies. Generally now they have those on the website in full. So you can print them off. It might be 1,000 pages, but you can print them off and you can see what's in the police budget. And it's not, everything they want does not get accepted. The problem is once it's in the budget, you don't have any control about how it's actually spent. So, they're going to make sure that they buy gas and, they like new police cars with all the bells and whistles. And you may be able to fund that. You may not be able to fund that. But they can go, you know what, we don't need a new police car. Let's buy this instead. And they can pretty much do that if the city manager allows it, or even the police chief allows it. And we won't ever even know.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So I've been waiting for the proper time to add a comment that's been sitting here from one of our viewers. Okay, there's 2 comments, but they're big and they take up the whole screen. So I didn't want to block somebody's face. Okay, so this is from YGRL and our Yang Gang brother, Brian Stahl. He lives in Arizona here with me. Not with me. We both live in Arizona. Anyway, mine-resistant vehicles top of the list of most expensive items transferred, with police forces operating 1,099 such vehicles, originally purchased at a combined cost of $745 million. Some researchers have argued that these heavily armored vehicles, originally deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan, have no obvious use in domestic law enforcement. I concur with Brian. And then the second one is
if you allow people to buy these, and if you allow them to have these things as part of their arsenal of their tools, right? When they look in their toolbox, they're like, I never get to use this. I feel like, you know, like a bunch of boys staring at their shiny toy that they never get to use.
Well, that's, you know, it's over my face. You want me to say anything?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Annette is about to read this to us.
Okay.
But Annette is on a lag.
Okay, so the next most valuable items are utility trucks, 2,711. Oh, I'm on the lag. Received, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I mean, you guys can all read that. And then just one last short one. The police all drive around in new SUVs here. Brian, where are you?
Revealed.
Are you in Phoenix or Tucson, or where are you in Arizona?
So we suddenly revealed our friend Burke Anderson, who is part of our team. Carolyn, you don't know Burke. I might have introduced him like by text to Kevin, but he ran for the Nevada Assembly from Las Vegas this past year. And he ran as a Democrat this year. Do you need to even be like, do you even need to list yourself as a Democrat to run? Yes, you do, huh? For state assembly, you do. Can you hear us, Burke? But in the past, Burke has been a libertarian leader in California before. So it's kind of interesting.
Did I lose you all?
You're just now coming in. Very good. Okay.
Well, yeah, I was saying you can run as whatever you want.
I think
just
Burke might
chose
be frozen. Oh, there he goes. There he goes.
Oh, I said you can run as whatever you want. I just chose to run as a Democrat mainly because I had registered as a Democrat for Andrew Yang. I mean, it was a good experience. I mean, I am sort of happy to say that compared to some of the other people that were out there that ran for different districts throughout Nevada, I did not actually get spanked. I actually did. I had a good showing. I got 30% of the vote with over 1,100 votes. So, I mean, I think it worked out well. One of the main things I was running on when I was running out there was working on cleaning up for the coronavirus and decontaminating. Now, I'm the kind of person that just, instead of just saying something, I go out and do it. So at this moment in time, geographically, I'm sitting in the middle of the Navajo Nation. The Navajo Nation per capita was the hardest hit with the coronavirus per capita in the continental United States. It's the reason why Arizona for a while was looking so red.
Burke, you're on a little bit of you're having a little video issues. So Carolyn, Burke was running for office in Nevada on a platform of UBI for Nevada. And
okay.
But then the coronavirus hit, and so they went into cleaning. Yes. So we're talking with two candidates from my congressional district, Burke. They're both running for the House. Yes.
Oh, cool.
And Carolyn is a medical doctor. And Kevin is running as a libertarian, so that probably would make you real comfortable here.
Yeah, I was actually about a decade ago, I was elected as the vice chairman of the Ventura County, California Libertarian Party.
Cool. Awesome. So, thank you for bringing the party to me because I didn't get here.
Well, can you still see me? Because I've lost where I was.
I can see you, but I can't really hear Kevin.
I hear
But
you,
I can hear you,
Carolyn.
Carolyn.
I can still see
Okay.
you, Carolyn.
I
Okay.
see you and hear you. Hmm.
All right. So,
But as far as the reception here, why I keep dying out is because, as I mentioned, I'm in the middle of the Navajo Nation. And I mean, it's pretty rough out here. 40% of the residents don't have running water. Close to half of the residents don't have
Okay.
electricity. Like more than like 70% of the roads are not paved. You know, I mean, it's literally almost like a third world country here, which is sad to say because, you know, I mean, these people have been here. I mean, wrap your brains around this. These people have been here on this land since before the Roman Empire. You know, I mean, how long ago was that? So, you know, it's something that people should definitely look into.
We have found a way to, through our colonial systems, you know, continue it through the modern age, and keep an oppressed people within our society. It's terrible.
Yeah, the government has not been great.
So you're there working on cleanup efforts to help them be able to open up the way that we're talking about in Texas. We're opening up with no cleanup, no precautions taken. I'm not seeing how our government is protecting us, and I feel like our numbers are going up.
One thing I will say about the Navajo Nation is they're taking it extremely seriously. There's no store you're allowed in without a mask. They limit the ins and out of every single store. There's the curfew every night starting at 8 o'clock until like 6 in the morning. And on most weekends, there's a 54-hour curfew. You're basically in at Friday at 8 and you're not allowed back out until Monday at 6 a.m. Unless you actually manage to be able to get a badge and a pass from the actual government that allows you to travel afterward. That's what this is. But without those, you're subject to a $1,000 fine.
Is that a decision by the people themselves, or is that a top down from somewhere else?
Well, I believe it's more top down, but the majority of the people, at least the ones we've talked to, but the people we talked to might be a little bit skewed because we're hitting some of the places that are the hardest hit where there's confirmed coronavirus there. That they're very happy and nobody really complains about it. And they understand because everybody here knows somebody who's been affected. Because the tribe is a very close knit, you know, and a lot of people know everybody. They might be way spread out geographically throughout the nation because the whole nation is about the size of West Virginia. So geographically, it's pretty large and it encompasses several states. New Mexico, for the most part, Utah, Arizona, which is where I'm currently at.
So Dr. Salter has been making...
If you didn't have it, you know
weekly,
somebody who had it.
So Dr. Salter's been making weekly or biweekly updates for our county from a medical, you know, standpoint of what's happening, but also she's very plugged into the politics of it. So what would you say is different in our area? Because Kevin is also here with us.
About as far as COVID-19 is concerned?
Yeah, for me, my major concern is that so many people have gotten sick in the jail and they're not showing those numbers with the regular public health records. So I don't feel like people are making good decisions because they don't even know what the real numbers are.
Well, they actually are putting them in there now. So, and that happened, I believe, at the end of last week. And all of a sudden, our numbers shot up from like in between 100 and 200 to over 900. And so I went over that on Friday about how that's not a real thing. It's always been there, but the data was in two different places. They just put them together. So it made it artificially look like we just went off the map, but but we didn't. And, you know, and I apologize. I might not be responding very well. I've lost the video. I can't see anybody, but I know you can talk to me. You can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
We hear you and we see you and we see each other. So
well, that's good. I just can't find you guys. So, you know, it's interesting that you're there in the Navajo because I have a friend who moved out there. He's a rector in the Episcopal Church. And I was hoping to do an interview with him either Friday or Monday if he has the internet in a Facebook live stream. So I'm glad to know that the information that I've been hearing on the news is pretty accurate. So it's just been devastating to the Navajo Nation. And they've responded about as well as you could reasonably expect a completely rural and mostly living in poverty community could respond. And they don't do any of this. Let's go out with a mask and don't worry about any effects on anybody else. I just want my personal freedom and I don't care. And a cavalier attitude about it. And, fortunately, we haven't had the sort of consequences that I was really fearful that we would have. Like all our beds would be full, the ICU would be overflowing, and people would be dying unnecessarily because they didn't have access to health care. But that hasn't transpired yet. But we're still in the middle of the first wave. There's no reason to worry about a second wave because we're having a sustained first wave. And I understand the economic desire and to open up, and the social needs of people to connect with each other, because it does make people sick when they can't connect, when they can't see each other, when they can't talk to each other, when they can't touch each other. It does impact your mental health and your physical well-being as well. So I get all that, but if you're gonna open back up, everybody needs to be smart about it. And everybody needs to be concerned about everybody else and not just care about their own personal idea of what they should be able to do without any oversight or impediment or restraint about what's good for other people too. And that's that. I just find that stunning, and I don't understand it.
How do you feel about that in terms of freedom and liberty from the Libertarian Party, Kevin? Is there an emphasis also on safety?
Yes, in fact, the guiding principle of libertarianism is the non-aggression principle.
I can't hear Kevin.
I cannot hear Kevin either.
That's funny because I can hear him, but I don't know what's happening.
Well, I hear him, but it's like 5% level.
Okay.
Right. I can barely hear him.
Exactly.
Can he hear us?
Yes, I hear all of you.
Nope, me neither.
I
Yeah,
can hear Kevin. That's so weird. I'm the only one.
Okay, so
Hold on. Let me
okay,
Mute
I'm
closed
gonna
caption.
mute Faye and
No.
Carolyn
Is that
and
better?
Burke.
Is that better? Now Faye,
Maybe that'll help.
maybe that'll help. Okay. Can you hear me now? I'm going to just assume
You're doing great now. You're really.
Okay.
I can hear
Fantastic.
you great now.
Okay. Where was I? Well, okay, the COVID thing. Testing is finally catching up with the demand. Here's one of the things that makes me mad about trusting government with this. The CDC
In the watch party, I'm on my other screen. I'm running a watch party,
yeah.
and there's closed captions there.
Oh, good. So they took. We were actually. We actually had companies in America that were selling tests to other countries that we could not use here. Why couldn't we use them? Because
We were talking about masks from the libertarian standpoint.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Like my freedoms and all that.
Right. And here's the deal. The guiding principle of libertarianism is the non-aggression principle. You do not hurt other people and you do not take their stuff. In order to do that in a pandemic, then you don a mask, because that's the best way not to hurt other people. Disrespecting that is basically denying science. So I don't. Everybody that says they shouldn't be wearing a mask is denying the science, and we know doing this prevents us from giving it to somebody else. And if they're also carrying a mask, then the likelihood of that passing to me or her or him is like 5%. This saves 95% of the people that I come in contact with. So not donning a mask is not libertarian. Libertarians don mask. We don't want to hurt other people. That's the whole point. We want a voluntary society. That's it. If we could get back to the Constitution, we can talk about getting to a voluntary society, but let's get back to that first.
You can't actually exercise those freedoms if you're dead or if your health is impaired. Right.
Exactly. So yeah, if you're claiming to be libertarian and not donning a mask, you're not libertarian because you're denying the science.
Especially Burke, you had something to say?
Yeah, well, I was just going to point out that especially in this area, with being such economically depressed, and especially with the lack of water, a lot of people have to make a decision. A majority of people have to get very large totes, 500 gallons, 250 gallons, 1,000-gallon ones, and fill up at a well, which could be 30, 40, 50 miles away from where they live. And transport it back, and then have to calculate, now this is my bathing water, my cleaning water, my drinking water, my everything water. And people will basically have problems with the amount that you're supposed to wash your hands and with the degree you're supposed to. That takes up a couple extra gallons. And if you got a family of like 5 or 6 people and you do that in over a week, you're talking 30, 40, 50 gallons worth of water. And, they're the real problem with just being up with the hygiene. They want to stay clean, but they also want to drink.
When I hear that, it makes me feel like so lucky to live even in our rural area because at least we have water. But sometimes our water systems have gone down too, where when there's a storm that comes in, we had no generator. We had no backup generator for our water system. Right. And people in the town didn't even know that the water was down, except by the fact that it wasn't coming out of their faucets for a minute. When they turned it back on, they didn't actually have the proper, they weren't actually sanitizing it. They were just turning it on in order for there to be enough pressure to do fireman work or things like that. And so we were told that we were supposed to boil our water, but the boil water notice doesn't go to everybody. Yeah, are you hearing Zephyr in the background? So Carolyn, I know we might have to give you a chance to go for dinner, but do you want to just tell us a little bit about sort of general water issues that rural areas may have before you take off? Or
well, one of the biggest problems that rural areas have is basically it's not just rural areas; it's everywhere in the United States. I think our engineering, National Institute of Engineers, whatever the name is, gave our infrastructure, I think, a D. And it's not just here. In Palestine, some of our pipes are over 100 years old. And some of them, when they were put in, they didn't even plumb them right. Like in our town, all water systems should be looped. And I don't know if you know what that means or not. Kevin does. But you're not supposed to have dead ends in a water system because then you get sludge. And so that's why the firemen have to come around and open up the faucets, the water hydrants, to get that sludge and dirt that tends to collect. If you have loop systems, well, it just goes round and round and round. But if it stops, then you got to open that up and let it out. And that's a huge waste of water. All that's clean water. It's perfectly good. And it costs money to clean it. So that's, it ends up being, you pinched a few pennies during the important part just to meet budgets, but you're going to pay for it later. So you don't really calculate in your return on investments because a lot of times cities just don't think that way. And they should, and the bigger ones do. They definitely do. But it kind of depends on the philosophy of the city council. And sometimes the people on city council and even the people in running the administration of the city, they just look at, are we going to balance a budget? That's all we got to do. And we'll move on from there. And maybe we'll be able to come back and fix that later. And of course, that never happens because there's emergencies, that happen. And then there's inflation. And then And then, you think you're going to get a grant from the government to fix it, and you don't. And then if you don't fix it, there are big fines that can happen from the result of that. That's what happened here in Palestine. So I want to go back to the mask thing for just a second on the Navajo Nation. It's really hard to socially distance when you got 5 people in a house and there's 2 bedrooms. And so that and that's the same thing that happens in poor areas and with underserved communities. They have sometimes, sometimes it's a cultural thing, but a lot of times it's a cost thing where you want everybody in the same house, and it's really hard to socially distance from the elderly. And then they get sick, and then everybody gets sick, or a kid gets sick, and then definitely everybody gets sick because kids just don't know how to contain germs. So I want to say that. And also in the Black populations and brown populations, it's more difficult to wear a mask because of the racial profiling that happens. And people are criminalized, they're intense criminalized when they wear a mask instead of being seen as good behavior and responsible, good citizen behavior. It's seen as, well, they might rob that store. So, unfortunately.
Well, there. As far as that goes with the masks, at least it's here in the Navajo Nation, if you do not wear a mask, you get every eye looking at you, and I'm sure you'll get somebody pointing at you and saying, "Hey, go get a mask."
Extremely rude.
Or walking up to you and saying, "Hey." A lot of them are really nice. A lot of them will probably walk up to you and say, "Hey, do you need a mask?"
Right.
And try to offer you one, because there are quite a few areas around here they're just giving masks away for free. They're all homemade.
Right.
But that's what they do here.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Navajo Nation, everybody knows everybody pretty much. I'm talking about in the rural and the inner urban areas where there's racial profiling.
Yeah, that's definitely a different area.
So there was one other thing
I'm familiar with that. Absolutely.
I want to say about policing, and there is a bill put forth by Democrats that, as I don't know about Amash's bill, but there are elements of that in the Democratic bill, and qualified immunity, eliminating that is one of the things on the Democratic side that is not on the bill that the Republicans put forth in the Senate. So the Republican bill is very, very much watered down from Justin Amash's bill and the Democratic bill. I just wanted to mention that.
And she's absolutely correct. It's way watered down. It's not even a slap on the wrist. It's pathetic.
Yeah, and this is why we run the Unity Edition, because we believe that politicians are not just the party that they wear. We actually have real issues to solve, and there's lots of solutions in which we can agree, and lots of times we can work together. That's how we have to push forward. I mean, I'm tired of playing football, and every 4 years we push the other team back. There's something is not right. People are getting lost.
Well, if your donors are benefiting from the status quo, then you want to keep it that way.
Right.
That's the rub.
Yeah.
Is that the Republican donors want to keep the status quo because they profit from it.
Exactly. Yeah, Carolyn and I are going to be way outspent on this campaign. I mean, Lance has gotten $1.2 million. Carolyn just got just over 35,000 that she's raised, and I just got over $1,000. So we have to go about it. Here's the deal in this district. I kind of know what's going to happen. The Republican's going to get 130 to 135,000 votes. Dr. Salter will probably get about 75,000. She might even get as high as 82,000, which would, by the way, set a new record for a Democrat in this district. But the real problem we have is apathy, which is my only chance to win, is that the non-voters in my district outnumber the voters 1.628 to 1. So there's 342,000 people that are not voting. If 38% of them show up and vote Libertarian, I'll win. So
Or if they vote Democrat, I'll win.
yes, they vote Democrat, you'll win.
Those apathetic voters are my secret weapon too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key for us, because her mountain to climb is Mount Everest, and I got to land on the moon with the Wright brothers plane. So it's a very tough battle, because the gerrymandering is pretty much guaranteeing what's going to happen, and it has since 1996. But like both of us, we have to win the apathetic vote and get people out of their seats, out of their homes. Go take a vote, mail in your vote, go early vote when there's nobody there. That's our only way to change this. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck with the same Republican who rides the coattails of Trump and never gets his lips off of his rump.
Well, I agree with Angelo Mendoza that just put a quote up there.
I missed it. Oh, wait, there it is.
He says, Angela says it's like voting for your favorite sports team, not policy, which is scary, but it seems to be changing. I think the young people are more on top of this, actually, and they're not eager to join a party because they've seen so much gridlock, and they don't know. They really want just the policy. So if you speak to them on policy, they show up for you.
Yay! That's been my focus too.
Well, it really is silly to look at politics.
I probably could have gotten it if I could have gotten my point across to enough people. My biggest problem is I did the whole thing with $3,500.
Wow.
And I did all the texting, pretty much all the mailing and stuff myself. And I didn't have enough time to get to everybody. You know, like it came too quick. And then especially by the time I was able to actually get the phone numbers and stuff, which I was able to get a hold of, it was mail-in voting. And I was starting to receive a lot of the people that said, oh, well, I already mailed it in. Sorry, I already made my thing. Sorry. You know, like the diehard voters, because I was going after the people that had voted consistently in the last 3 primaries in a row.
Right.
And yeah, by the time I got there, so people that are out there, I mean, really support people that are running, because, you know, that any little bit can help. I mean, it might sound kind of weird or whatever, but I truly believe if I would have had $10,000 total or $15,000 donated to me a month ago or a month and a half ago, there's a decent chance I might have actually won.
Right.
I mean, I got a third of the votes from being an absolute nobody. You know, there was about 3,400 votes total cast, and I got almost 1,200. So, and I still had more than a third of the people that I had never even been able to reach at all through my mailings or through my. I mean, I had one lady who we called up, we talked, and after 40 minutes of talking, we realized, hey, wait a second, you're a Republican. You can't vote for me anyways in the primary. I continued to talk to her for 20 more minutes. I asked her nothing, and you can do this in Nevada. She said, Sonny, because she was an older woman in her 70s. She said, as soon as we get off the phone, I'm going to change my party, and I'm going to become a Democrat. I'm going to vote for you. The day after, I'm switching back to Republican. So whether she did it or not, I'll never know. But, you know.
Well, luckily we have a somewhat open primary here, and Annette has something she wanted to interject here. Let's hear what Annette was going to say.
There is someone about trying to come in to the stream, and I don't know or recognize this person, so I'm happy to add them, but I don't know how to introduce them. So
special guest.
Well, hopefully we're not being Zoom bombed or stream bombed. Let's see.
I know. I hope not. Hello. So this is Jimothy.
Hi there.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Actually, my name is James, but trying to be fancy here. Yeah.
James, is that you?
Yeah.
Are you James Dung? Is your last name Zhang? Yeah, so I do know him. He's our Yang Gang brothers. We're all right.
Oh, this man.
Okay.
I mean, he might not like me to say this, but I'm just going to throw it out here. This man right here is responsible for as much as I did get. I could not have done my campaign without him. it would not have done it all like if it did if it wasn't for this man's help.
So Burke, though, faced unique challenges in his fundraising, and we can't go into that right now, but Yang Gang usually does come through with funding and assistance, but Burke had some unique challenges this time around. So
yeah, well, I couldn't get an ACT. I'll put it out there. I couldn't get an ACT Blue account in time because making myself a nonprofit, and it just takes time. And I was waiting for a confirmation letter back from the IRS, and I even had the number and everything already, but I hadn't gotten the letter, and the banks wouldn't let me start it without that actual paper. And of course, it's going to show up now, probably in a few more days.
Yeah,
but but I do plan on possibly making a go out of it in 2022, and I've learned a lot. And by that time, who knows what the future holds.
And
but
also,
right now, I'm just dedicated on the coronavirus.
Carolyn, you had your hand up. Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to say running for office is formidable with all the rules and regulations that you have to follow with the FEC reports and the House ethics reports. And so kudos to you for running for the Nevada Assembly. It's and Kevin and me, yay us. It's really, really good when people run for office in a primary and in the November election, because it gives voters choice and it gives them an opportunity to talk about the issues. So I want to thank you for having me. I'm going to have to slip away now. It was nice to meet everybody and actually see you guys. You continue on, soldier on, and there was. Oh, I remember the other thing that I wanted to say is one of the things that the Democratic Party, I think it's maybe always been on there, but I'm sure Andrew Yang had something to do with it, is public funding of elections. Public funding of elections would, especially, I kind of like the way Andrew did it. With offering
democracy dollars,
was give the victory dollars or the liberty dollars, and so allow people to fund the candidate of their choice instead of having this unlimited black hole of dark money that helps our opponent Lance Gooden win, and we don't have any way to know why or how that's happening and who's behind it all. But I don't believe Lance is going to win. So we'll see.
We'll take him out.
Thank you all, and
Bye, Dr. Salter.
Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye, Dr.
Okay.
Salter.
Bye, Carolyn.
Bye bye.
All right. So that was fun. Thanks for being so kind as to share your time with her today, Mr. Hale.
No, she's awesome. As you see, we agree a lot on policy. It's how we get there that we disagree. I would like us to get there through a voluntary society, and she wants government to provide that service for us. But government's already providing that service, and it's not meeting the needs, which is why I'm open to a UBI replacing our current welfare net, because it's not catching everybody. There's people falling through, whereas a UBI would allow for people, and I would prefer that it be just for people that are poor, that make less than $42,000. Now, I understand where you're coming from and that you want it for everybody, but I think after $42,000, you're in a position, especially if we don't tax those people, you're in a position where you can actually grow your foundation of wealth. And at that point, you can start contributing to taxes if you want to. Preferably, I would like people to keep their money that they earn and volunteer to either donate it to a food bank, help with housing for the homeless or whatever. But we're not there yet. Our government and our society has become dependent, and also, how can I say it? They expect government to provide these services. And I'm like, no, individuals provide services. Why don't we just cut the government, the middleman, out, and let's just do it together? Which is going to be a hard road. It's going to be a hard road to get there. But until we start recognizing that, like you said, the people are falling through the net, we're not going to be able to get there.
Well, what I love about you, Kevin, is that you are willing to listen as well as telling us about your policies. And so I'm going to go ahead and send you some information that we have for that show that there is a sort of a there's an equivalence, okay, to sort of different plans that sound more progressive because it ends at a certain, like the tax starts at a certain level or whatever like that, versus the plan where it sounds so much simpler. Like basically everybody gets the same amount. Right. So I'm going to send you some information, and you can look it over in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll read over it. I'm always open to new ideas. I think that's what's wrong with our politics, is that people are not open to ideas or working across the aisle, and providing a third party would actually force their hand in doing that, because it's a shot across the bow to both parties that you're not meeting the needs of our people. So that's why
I actually was interested.
That's the value proposition that I bring, is that electing a third party holds both parties accountable.
Right. I saw that how you were saying that that your positions are somewhat aligned with Carolyn's, but I was even more interested in how your positions are aligned with the Republicans in our district, because there's a lot of them.
There is. I mean, Texas is red, guys. It's going to be red for a long time. So my strategy in attacking the red is to go after the Tea Parties, the fraction of the Republicans that's called the Tea Party.
Now, wait a minute. You said attacking the red, but I think you're representing the red.
Well, yeah. I want to represent them if they will vote for me. But what I'm trying to do is hold the Republicans accountable for their rhetoric. They talk a big game about lowering taxes and making government smaller and spending less of your money. But when they got in power in 2016, the first thing they did with the budget in 2017 was create the largest spending bill in U.S. history, the omnibus bill, which is like, you just got lied to. You just got lied to. They had all the power. They had all the vote. And what did they do? They spent more than any other government before them. So that's my plea to the Republicans, is like, guys, you're not getting what you're asking for. Send a libertarian who's fiscally libertarian, which means I will hold their feet to the fire and hold them to a budget that's balanced. This is so frustrating to me that we spend so much money, that we spend not only the taxes they steal from you in the first place, but we're going to borrow another $1 trillion or $2 so your grandchildren have to pay that back. We are basically robbing our grandchildren of their wealth.
Right.
It's the broken window fallacy from Project Baptiste. All over again, in which the baker has to replace a window versus going to buy a suit. So, because his window got broken, he didn't really create any new economy. He had to replace what he already had. That's what debt does to our future generations. And I don't know if anybody realizes that these $1 trillion bills are going to burden our great-grandchildren with money that they can't spend on infrastructure, which we just heard Dr. Salter tell us that the whole country is getting a D on. Our pipes,
in terms of water infrastructure,
our streets, our bridges, all of that is crumbling. It's decades and decades old. And we need to spend that money here on those things versus sending billions of dollars on a war that doesn't make sense. Why don't we spend that money on the infrastructure that our country needs, instead of destroying infrastructure around the world for no good reason?
Well, here's Jacqueline to cheer for you, apparently. Jacqueline from 99 Reasons Why. This is that your writing? Where's your writing, Jacqueline?
All over the place. I get all over like horse shit.
As a Texas guy, I really appreciate that saying.
I write on Patreon. I write on Quora. I write on Facebook. I write on Twitter. I post everywhere. I just now got, before I came on here, had to be pulled into a situation where I had a bad copy. A landlord who was a fellow human trafficking survivor leader, his landlord lost the rent check. And I had to go play bad cop for a minute. And that was after a fun-filled day of trying to get my husband's medicine sorted out because he's been without his heart pills for a couple days. Because
I was wondering what was happening with you.
Yeah, because CVS once again failed to follow instructions, which was to mail the medicine. We don't have a car. We'll probably never be well off enough to afford a freaking car. I'm diabetic and legally blind, and we're both disabled. And we both got kicked in the face by life so bad that if we can become unpoor, I'll be happy. But rich enough to afford a car, I don't see happening. Which means that CVS, which supposedly has delivery for medicine, needs to get their act straight. And every month we go through this with him. So it was scary this month because I thought I was going to lose him because he's been without his heart meds for a couple days. And it was all day. And this is around trying to create Patreon material because now I've picked up from friends in Yang Gang, by the way, thanks to James or Timothy. You know,
do you want us to call you James or Timothy right now?
James is fine. I'm just trying to have the cool nicknames.
But it's like I was trying to teach trading, and I'm trying to create these Patreon materials to teach options trading for poor folks because I'm poor and I know how to trade. And it's like, you know what? Screw these means-tested programs that don't work. Just give me money so I can buy my own damn food. Shove your food stamps up your ass. And shove your SSI up your ass, too, because I'm not going to get a divorce and go be homeless for 2 years.
Right.
Just to get a $700 a month check as somebody who's medically disabled and unable to work outside the home. That's crazy. And to have programs that do that instead of lift people up is just the most craptastic, assholeian bunch of crap I've ever heard of. And I don't care about labels. I don't give a fuck about parties. My best friends are all people in Yang Gang from all over the political spectrum. I don't care about labels. I like the policies. I like what I heard you say, Kevin. I like what I heard the doctor talk about. I like, this is the thing. We have a country that is stuck on the stupid train.
Yeah, it is.
And we have the problem with the water also being compounded by how do I explain this? We've had a problem with poverty in this country that was never even looked at or acknowledged until just now. Where with the way utility deregulation has been handled, it left the poor who don't even have enough to meet basic needs. Like, in Detroit is ground zero for this. Literally suffering from water shutoffs. And we have that going on now with the pandemic. That, state and local governments are trying to get blood out of turnips.
Right.
If there is no income, and this would have been the sensible thing to do. Of course, the government hasn't been sensible. The sensible thing to do is instead of the Federal Reserve shoveling money like it was water at a marathon race at corporations, right, to prop up the economy. I'm saying this as a trader, as an options trader.
Yeah.
The thing to do would have been give money to the people. We are the economy. Without us, there is no economy. There is no economy. There's no stock market. There's no Chicago Board of Options Exchange. There's no fucking crypto coin. There's no nothing. There is no nothing. And if they would have done that and acted right in the first place, we wouldn't have this. But we are seeing now the resurgence of COVID compounded by the refusal for whatever reason. And I don't want to hear that it's all Trump or it's all Republican. No, it's Democrats too. It's all of them refusing to get on their horse and solve this problem instead of arguing about it.
Do we want to give Kevin a chance or James a chance to tell us how they feel about this?
Go, James.
Yeah. when I joined the Yang Gang, I started meeting a lot of new people, and this is where like I started really branching out and meeting people coming from poverty, just like Jacqueline. And so it didn't really like if I didn't meet them, I wouldn't know like how bad like poverty is. It really is like a quicksand. And so I've been helping Jacqueline for the past like 3 weeks, along with like everyone else here, and we're really we're literally trying to lift her up in her life or death situation, because if she can't pay the bills for this month, then then the electricity is going to shut off, and then it's going to cause a whole chain of events where it could literally she could literally like just collapse.
No, it won't be that pleasant. Diabetic acute diabetic distress or diabetic ketoacidosis is not pleasant. Right. I've already suffered. That's how I lost 80% of my vision in my right eye from diabetic complications, because of not being able to get food that I could have that's diabetic friendly, not being able to afford the testing strips and the glucose monitoring supplies that I need that Medicaid won't pay for. They'll pay for my insulin and tell me, because I'm a poor woman, that I should shut the fuck up and be grateful for that. But I can't get my numbers. I can't test my glucose 3 times a day like I'm supposed to, so I don't have to wing it with my insulin.
Yeah. So
I want to say goodbye to everyone for a minute, because I'd love to let Angelo come in, who's been chatting with you by text.
Yeah.
He's one of our Yang Gang brothers.
I'm trying to keep him alive. I can't do that if I'm freaking dead.
So I'll be out watching you guys, and I can chat with you from over there. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, Mr. Hale. Really appreciate you.
I appreciate it too. Go ahead,
Don't
Bert.
go anywhere, Ben.
Okay.
I actually got to run and kind of do some stuff here.
Okay.
Because I am going to work. So you stay, and I'm gonna head out.
Thank you for coming, Burke. I was waiting for your. That was a great, really great update from you, and thank you for telling us about what's happening at the Navajo Nation where you are.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay, so here we go. I can put Burke's.
Bye, Burke.
Okay, hold on, Burke. Here's Burke's contact info right here, because he's going to take off. So burkefornevada.com is his website, and he's Burke Anderson with 2 S's on Twitter, and on Facebook, and then Twitter he's at Burke for the number 4 Yang. Does all of that is accurate?
Yeah,
Burke?
That's all good. And I would say if anybody has any interest in, there's going to be things that might be doing to try to help the Navajo Nation. So if anybody wants to reach out to me through Messenger or Twitter and ask questions about it, it's not happening quite yet. But let's put it this way: if everything goes the way we're hoping, we're actually going to be out here until January. So we might be out here for quite a while. So we can really, stop this at least here, and then hopefully educate people, and then hopefully it spreads. Because this is the same kind of stuff they did in South Korea, Taiwan, a lot of other places around the world. We're actually using the same kind of message in the same ways, where a lot of the federal government just doesn't want to. Even though we're using stuff that the U.S. military used, and it's FDA approved, and it's safe for human contact. But anyways, that's for another show. I will talk to you all later. All right. Bye-bye.
I sent you a Facebook request, Burke. Thank you.
And I'll answer very shortly.
So,
hey, we're here to make new friends, and hopefully you two will be great friends in the future.
I know, yeah. I already have a banner for Kevin. I do usually do that at the end of the show. I put everybody's contact info up. So Jacqueline, if you put your contact info in the private chat. Oh, never mind. It's there. Okay.
Yeah, she put her thing in, and I want to also get some information from Carolyn for you. Okay, while I'm still here.
I have one for her already also. So I will put that up.
Oh, wow. Good job.
Oh, yeah. I was on this like hours before. So I'm good
Put
like
Dr.
that.
Salter up there.
All right, so
Hey,
let's
Angelo.
welcome our Yang Gang brother,
How's it going?
Angelo.
Good to meet you, sir. I've enjoyed your comments as they've rolled up.
Angelo is
Angelo
in
is-
Arizona
thank you.
with Annette.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe not with like
Arizona
in the
Yang
same city
Gang
because
has been-
Annette's way
has
far
been
in the rural
very-
area.
Arizona
Oh, yeah.
Yang Gang
Arizona
has
Yang
been
Gang.
very, very active, still, like continuously. So Angelo, could
Yeah.
you tell us, aren't some Arizona peeps, is it you that gets to go speak in front of Congress? Or like to testify about
Yes, I'm
UBI?
actually the one leading that with Hannah Wan. Mhm.
Hannah
Yeah, I'm
Wan,
actually
okay, right.
one of the two people that is organizing that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Jacqueline
it's-
is mentioning that you are actually working, dealing with mountain fires and what she's calling a fire NATO.
Oh yes. Well, we did get a fire NATO on the mountain. It's about 26 miles away from me now. Like I can literally see the fire from my porch. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're dealing with some major fires down here, and unfortunately, where we're at, it's impossible for us to really get anywhere. There's a lot of mesquite trees, heavy brush, greasewood, and pine forming a direct beeline to where I'm at, which will actually encircle the whole area, sort of like a fire moat if it actually starts to spread in that direction.
Well, let's hope it doesn't do that.
Yeah, hopefully. So I wanted to talk really quick about about UBI because I think it's one area where it doesn't just help people, and I think this is an area that a lot of people miss when they talk about UBI. It also helps states become more solvent. If you think about some of the rural areas in the states, what's the biggest problem that they have with funding? It's that the people there don't have a lot of money to be able to contribute to buying things locally and generating taxes for the city. If you give everyone a UBI, that means that those areas become much more solvent. That means that's more city and state taxes going into that area, which allows them to build more hospitals, build more schools,
What
have
a
the facilities that they
concept.
need, invest in better infrastructure.
Angelo, there was
So
this
it really is
brilliant
powered from the
guy
people up.
who had an idea about that. A really smart fella, and he likes barbecued turkey legs, and he's funny as all get out, and he's so sweet, and he's smart as a whip. What is his name? Oh yeah, Andrew Yang.
I love how you're in your math hat right there, Jacqueline.
The hat stays on. Yang wrote him in. Wrote him in.
Oh, hold on.
Good for you.
Oh,
Hey, look at that.
reason why. Let me go grab that real quick. Yeah, Kevin.
Always at arm's
Policy
length.
more than label. I don't care about political labels. I care about policies that help people.
Yeah, thank you.
And I care about policies that really help. I don't mean paternalistic, inadequate, stingy, punitive, so-called help programs.
Right.
I'm talking a real social floor because UBI doesn't just help the poor. It prevents other people from becoming poor, and it helps the poor unpoor themselves.
Right.
It would solve so many problems, especially with this situation like where Angelo's dealing with these fire NATOs. He's right in the damage path. You know how many poor people without cars could maybe have a less stressful time trying to figure out how to evacuate if they had UBI? Do you realize how many lives could have been saved in Hurricane Katrina if we had UBI? I remember Katrina. I know Annette does, and I know Kevin, you probably do. I'm not the only older gang person in here.
Now, I know that Kevin is going to want to make an ask, so that he can get some help with his campaign and stuff here. But I also want to make an ask to Kevin, which is that Humanity Forward is looking at a lot of candidates and sort of doing the job of the vetting for the group, you know? And so if you're interested in coming out as a UBI candidate, then you would probably be able to get that support. As you can tell, we all really like your policies in general, and we're very, very clearly aligned with you. So I would encourage you to maybe look up that. I can give you the information, and you can see if you would like to do that.
Send me the information. From what I see on the surface, I'm okay with UBI if we can use it as a replacement to the welfare system that lets too many people fall through the net. You know, if you qualified for, you know, for Section 8 or food or any of that, you should be getting a UBI. We'll just give you cash. You spend it on, you know, that's what I like about UBI, is that you get to decide what is important to you on your financial end. That's what I like about UBI. What I don't like is that you're going to give it to everybody. How are we going to pay for it then?
Okay, so for that case, I would send you either Jacqueline, or also we have someone named Scott Santons, who is one of our great policy advisors that has been helping Mike Royer in Kentucky.
Because the problem I see with it is like Jacqueline said earlier about the Federal Reserve just printing money out of thin air, and it doesn't have any value. In fact, in a couple of years, you're going to see inflation happen.
Hold up, Kevin. I know where you're going, and you're partly right. Yeah. But there's a whole story here that you're not seeing and that a lot of people aren't seeing. And that's okay, because most people don't see this.
Well, that's why I'm here. I want to see it.
Oh, Lord, I'm about to get banned from the internet now because I'm about
you're not.
I'm about ready to launch into some truth telling, and once I do that, I'm all gas and no fucking brakes. So hang on to your seat, folks. What the whole picture is it wasn't just the printing of the money. The Federal Reserve the government spends money into action for what it prioritizes. The problem is that it was shoveled all to the supply side. Now, it does not matter if all these businesses were given, you know, a major facelift, if you will. Well, it's more than a major facelift. If nobody can afford to buy stuff from them, if they can't afford to pay for their goods and services, which is why that's number one reason. The other problem with that picture is it wasn't so much the printing of the money. It was that it was sent in the wrong damn direction. Money operates like, and I'm going to force you to put on a math hat, whether you like it or not, buddy. Okay? Because I got a math degree.
I don't have a math hat.
And you're going to learn some partial differential equations of the second order right about now. Money has velocity and direction. Okay? Yep. And what happened was the Federal Reserve, they are limited to by, you know, what the government allows them to do.
They're a private organization. They're a private organization. They really are not limited, and that's the problem. We need to audit the Fed.
Well, yes and no. I mean, they are limited in the sense that they only have the authority that the government allows them to have. You know, if they were just you or me, they'd be busted for like Joseph Smith from the Mormons counterfeiting in their fucking
counterfeiting. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like they have authority that's given to them, you know, to a point. But what the problem is that the money went in the wrong. Number one, the money went in the wrong direction. Number two, the Federal Reserve, I'm sorry, Jerome Powell bent over and let Donald Trump make him his bitch. That wouldn't have been me.
Yeah.
And that would have been like, no, here's what we need to do. My job as Fed chair is to maintain sound fiscal policy and keep the macro end of the markets functioning. What you need to do is your job, and that's take care of the people to keep the micro end of the markets going. And that's where most of the money should have gone. The fact that it did not, okay, and the fact that we have a government that, quite frankly, has been asleep at the switch for a long time. They've cut social programs for the disabled and the poor and left poor people to suffer and die so that they could shovel money into places where it didn't belong. It did not belong going into no bid contracts. It did not belong going into the Pentagon for it to lose more money in its fucking sofa in 1 week than what gets spent on the people of this country in 10 years. And that, I'm not talking hyperbole.
No, you're not.
Get back with me. I've got facts to back this up because I don't bring sticks to gunfights, brother.
Yeah.
I don't.
No, you're absolutely right. The government put the money in the wrong place. They could $2 trillion, and we got 1,200.
They're bailing out fucking companies. No offense.
Yeah.
Not ever go back to normal.
That's exactly my point. Is that's not capitalism. Capitalism lets the companies fail. By infusing their money back into the companies, they've picked the winners and losers in our economy, not the consumer. Which is one of the big things I'm talking about when I talk to people about us not being a capitalist society. I know people like to blame capitalism and there's a big push for socialism, but we don't have a capitalist society anymore because there's subsidies, there's bailouts, there's tax loopholes for the corporations, and there's regulations that prevent other competition from entering the market. And that's all markets. One of the things I want to do, and it's just because this market is just now emerging, is I want to prove my point about free markets with hemp. Hemp would be awesome to prove my point because it is usable in almost every industry: oil and gas, industrial rope.
Concrete foundations made with hemp have
CO2 negative.
You make food out of it.
It's a CO2 negative product when it's concrete, and there's a sand shortage that we can replace with hemp and start getting our sand back to our beaches. Most people don't even talk about that on the environmental side because we've used so much sand in building these concrete world that we're low on sand. That's one of the things that's happened to our environment. If we switch back to hemp concrete, we could have concrete that lasts 100 years, is pest resistant, fire resistant, and is a CO2 negative product. You can use it for wood. It has every single amino acid your body needs. You can eat it. It's good for you.
It calms your nerves.
Yeah, you have cannabinoid receptors in your whole body. It's meant for us. By criminalizing hemp and cannabis, they've left billions of dollars of economy growth out there for us to grab. They finally, in the farm bill that legalized hemp and also censored the Congress from talking about a war debate. Yeah, it did two things. Go read the farm bill. But it did legalize hemp. What's happening, unfortunately, is that in order to grow hemp in Texas, at least I'll tell you in Texas, you have to get a license from the state. So they're already picking the winners and losers. You already have a socialist government. They're telling you who's going to be the provider of services and who's going to be the winners in the marketplace.
We have what we have is neoliberalism in action, and neoliberalism. And I want to define this to make this perfectly clear, because most people get hung up and they think it has to do with liberals or politics. No. It is a framework that operates within the larger capitalist framework, but it doesn't have to. You can have capitalism without neoliberalism. Andrew Yang had a wonderful platform called human-centered, as in human rights-based, and I like that. Now, having previously come from the side, neoliberalism is the act of, it's the process of third worldization of the world, basically the United States, everybody else, by basically extracting from the people and keeping people poorer and poorer until the rich eat themselves. And I mean the super rich. I mean guys that can eat Jeff Bezos's breakfast.
Yeah, the 1%ers.
Bigger than the 1%ers.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the top 1/10 of 1%.
Wow.
And it's just, it's one of those things, like, the best way to describe it is if you've ever seen the movie Hannibal, which is the sequel to Silence of the Lambs, and you see Anthony Hopkins, who plays Hannibal Lecter, and he's feeding Ray Liotta, the actor who plays Agent Krenler, parts of his brain, and he just goes, this is good. It's like eating his own brain, and he's thinking it's the best thing since pate.
So, Jacqueline, because we're coming up on about 2 hours, I wanted to give Kevin a chance to also get his dinner, and I wanted to give Angelo a chance to weigh in on this last bit. That Angelo, you said you had some insight you wanted to talk about before your internet goes out again.
Yeah. So one thing about debt, which I wanted to kind of dispel this misconception, the reason why we're able to print so much money and it not actually affect us is because we're not really borrowing it. What we have is a fiat currency and our status as the world reserve currency status. That is what gives our money value, because what the world reserve currency status means is that every country, when they want to do trade with each other, has to convert their money into US dollars to do the exchange.
Yep.
Because of that, our money will never actually deflate.
It already has. It already has. Since the Fed took over, it's down 96%.
It's down, but it fluctuates. That's when.
Here's the thing about the Fed that as a congressman, I think that one of the enumerated powers in the Constitution is that the Congress shall set the standard for the monetary standard. They've given away that to the Federal Reserve, which is a private organization. Yeah. I want Congress to take back its power after an audit of the Fed, because that's not true. What's going to happen is you're going to have inflation, and the dollar has already come down 96% from when they took over. What we need is competitive currencies, which is why I'm so happy about Bitcoin and all of those types of currencies, because they provide competition, and also the blockchain technology behind it will also allow us to maintain the value of those. Because once it's traded, you already know the established value. Yeah, that's not what's happening with our money. What's happening is that they're printing it out of thin air, and there's nothing to back it except our military.
Well, there hasn't been anything to back it since we got off of the gold standard.
Right, which is which took over.
Yeah, because that was a hard limiter on how much you could basically divide the value of the gold versus, so there was a hard limit on how much cash you could actually print. That was back in the days when they actually had that little gold mark on the dollars, if you remember those.
Yeah, as a kid, I collected a couple of them, but I can't find them now.
Oh, those are worth way more now than
I wish I could find them. I could use them for my campaign.
Yeah, but I'm sure you're aware that there's also other countries that have a U.S. printing press to be able to facilitate that exchange.
Yeah.
So that also adds to the inflation. One good thing about UBI is that it does one thing that nothing else does, and that is it keeps money cycling through the economy, rather than staying at the top and just being invested in stocks and other things like that, where it's staying there.
Dead people who die from poverty don't make good customers.
Exactly.
Exactly.
If it goes to the bottom, it's actually being traded all the way up and taxed every point along the way, and then cycles right back down. Right. That is the whole point of capitalism, supply and demand. That's and right. When we're getting artificial inflations of supply and no one has the money to generate that demand, the money isn't circulating. Right. That's what UBI does. It puts the money back at the bottom where it's going to be circulated the most, and then goes all the way back up and back down. So it is the perfect plan. It's actually why Thomas Paine suggested it when we first came up with the capitalist system that we have today, because capitalism only works when it doesn't start at zero. Even monopoly requires a certain amount of money.
Starting cash.
Yeah. Without that, you got nothing. Right. Most people today are starting off in debt. They're starting off with less than nothing. And that is what's really stagnating our economy.
Well, every child born today is born with $60,000 worth of debt. Mm-hmm. That's wow. What the national debt does to us. Every child born today is born with $60,000 debt. Every taxpayer owes $130,000 in taxes to the debt, just to the debt. That's what I'm talking about. The broken window fallacy is that we'll spend money paying back this debt instead of spending that money on infrastructure. that's
Yeah.
what's going to happen to us. That's what I fear.
Yeah, generate the engine of the economy, and we'll pay off that debt plus have, extra to work with. But
I can see your logic on that. I understand where you're coming from on that logic. I don't believe we need to give it to everybody. I think we just need to give it to people of the working poor, middle class, or those unemployed.
We already have a means-tested nightmare because of that. And I'm going to tell you why this is wrong. And then, Kevin, I don't mean to pick on you, and I don't want to put you in a hot seat.
No, that's why I'm here.
Let me please tell you why that is exactly the wrong thing to do, okay? The reason that's the wrong thing to do is, number one, it foments.
Foments. What do you mean by that?
It
creates
an environment of political revanchism where you have people resenting, that are just above the cutoff line. They're resenting like hell the people who are getting. Number one.
Which is what happens now.
Which is what happens now, even though the poor don't get enough help.
Right.
I'm diabetic, and I have no income, and I can't even though Medicaid will pay for my insulin, they won't pay for the $600 a month worth of blood sugar testing supplies and monitoring that I need, so I don't have to wing it with my insulin and hope the fuck I don't end up in a diabetic coma.
Right, because you could go either way with the
insulin. People who are better off than I'll ever be as a 53-year-old disabled diabetic woman, resent that I get Medicaid. Now, imagine if everybody had a public option it was sliding fee scale based on income, and everybody got the same quality health care, and nobody was left out. Imagine if everybody got UBI. Now, here's the other thing. The means testing to jump through. I'm medically disabled enough because of diabetic complications that cost me 80% of my vision in my right eye from macular degeneration and damage to the optic nerve as a result of diabetes. Okay. Now, in order to get a $700 a month SSI check, which is enough to live on exactly nowhere in the United States.
Right. You won't even pay rent for a 1-bedroom.
You can't even pitch a fucking tent in a goddamn KOA campground for that.
Right.
All right. But to get its SSI check, my husband, who's 77, yes, he kind of robbed the cradle. There's 24 years in.
Yeah.
And he made me laugh. So, and we're happily married 17 years.
That's perfect.
I'm going to tell you something. To get help from SSI, I would have to get a divorce. Okay. He is the only living family I have. I would have to get a divorce, take my name off the deed to the marital home that's fallen apart, because we haven't had enough income to fix our place for years. So now it rains in our upstairs, which is why my downstairs looks the way it does, because all our stuff is down here.
Right.
Right? Now, I'd have to, take my name off the house, go be homeless for the 2 years worth of waiting period to go through a determination process. And because my husband's retirement benefit of Social Security that he gets as a retired elderly 77-year-old man, he gets $1,037 a month. My income is doo-doo, nothing. All right. And I'm too rich for an SSI check.
Because of the asset of the house, right?
Because of his income.
Oh, okay. Because of his income. I got you.
And
that's another one of those things where the government really got in the way of trying to help people.
Well, yeah. I mean,
that's why I'm like open to the UBI, because
that's why UBI has to be universal, though, because the minute you interject means testing, what you are then bound and obligated to do is implement a vehicle to enact the means testing. You're going to have to figure out a way.
So I didn't lose any of the administration.
Whether or not you should get it, whether or not you need it or not. And that's why the means testing is no good. Now, I understand your point. Yes, somebody who's got Jeff Bezos's budget doesn't need it. Guess what? Right. Jeff Bezos isn't going to notice it. But for somebody like me, it's a difference between life and death. We can always tax it on the back end. And Andrew Yang came up with this wonderful idea for doing that. It's called implementing a VAT.
Value-added tax.
You can't get out of it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you go to the Cayman Islands. If you, it doesn't matter. You buy something, you're paying the VAT.
Yeah.
Yep, and it's taxed. It's taxed on the value added, which also means that businesses are less inclined to price gouge because it ignores the initial cost of manufacturing the good. It is the value added on top of that that's taxed. So the bigger the inflated price, the more they're taxed on it.
When we get
how are they going to know what the production cost is?
Well, here's the thing with the
private companies aren't going to tell you that.
That's included as part of the VAT regulation. So when a value-added tax is set up, if they want to be able to recoup the parts of the VAT along the way, they have to put in what the initial manufacturing cost was and be able to prove that, and then what their value was on top of that. Yeah. Like what was the extra value added.
Who gets to determine that value? Is it the government or the consumer?
It is the company that's determining how much their prices are increased versus the base amount. And then the government says, okay, this is how much of extra value you've added on to this. This is the initial cost. This is how much more you're asking for it. That's the added value. So as long as the added value is calculated, that's the portion that's taxed at 10%. Which, when you do that for every sale, items that are already way overinflated in price, you're going to be paying a lot more for that, especially luxury items where it can be a 200% markup. They're going to be taxed through the nose for that. Same thing with companies that provide things like insulin, where it is a 300% markup from the actual cost. Yeah. And that was recorded. That huge markup at 10% would be generating huge amounts of value. And it would be de-incentivizing for companies to throw up these huge markups where they're like, well, I have a captive market, because they know that they're going to be paying out the nose in taxes for it. So it encourages them to actually keep their prices.
Who actually pays the value added tax? Is it the consumer or the business?
The person.
A little of both.
A little of both, actually, because it is paid. The value added tax is paid along the entire manufacturing process. Every time an item is sold, every time a component is sold, that component has a little value added tax added to it, all the way up to the end final.
So if I'm building a car that has 10,000 nuts and bolts in it,
every single piece of that is taxed along the way to the manufacturer. That then
I thought it was higher priced items, though, not like on everyday items like nuts and bolts.
Well, that's the thing.
It's more like on yachts and private jets and things like that. So it's more like on the more luxury items and not every. Chandler really, really would like to jump in. So if anybody is, Kevin, we want you to stay. You are the guest of honor. We want you to stay for as long as you are willing to hash it out with us, brother. Because this is going really well, you know?
So that's actually what I wanted to give Kevin a chance to jump off if he needs to have dinner now, because we have scheduled you for 2 hours.
Yeah, well, I want to hear. I want to keep going, so it's fine. I'm good.
Okay, then I'm going to take off.
Water when someone else is talking, but I'm good otherwise.
Right. So I'm going to jump off now so some of the other people who would love to talk to you can get a chance. Okay?
Of course.
See you later.
Bye,
Have a
Faye.
beautiful day.
Thank you for inviting me to this. I really appreciate it, Faye.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
It's been really great. Thanks, Faye.
Thanks, Faye.
All right. So here is Chandler.
Hi, Chandler.
He's been waiting patiently. And he has some ideas, and he put them in our private chat too, but let's let him explain his ideas. And then now we have Ariel waiting backstage also. So if anybody is done, like putting in their 2 cents, other than Kevin, then if they would like to, other than Kevin, let us know, and we'll let you say your goodbyes and let you say your final piece, so then Ariel can jump on because he always has good stuff to say. Okay, go ahead. On that note, Chandler, take it away.
Okay. I normally would first start off asking who you are, but I guess I'm given a limited time to say my idea. Is that right?
All right, that's fine.
Okay. I actually have a problem with the VAT tax as well because it's applied at the point
Oh, no,
of
no, no, no.
transaction along the way.
No, you can.
What?
No, there's no time limit. Okay, listen. Let me tell you who he is.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to tell you who Kevin is real quick. He is the Libertarian candidate running for Congress in Texas in District 5. And earlier we had on a Democrat candidate as well, and they're running for the same position. So Kevin is Libertarian, and he's been really great, and he's been a really great sport answering questions, and we did him. So there you go.
Okay. Hey, I was intrigued by Yang and the UBI, but I didn't dig into it. And talking to you guys has really kind of opened my eyes to it. And like I said, I've always been kind of open to it if we could use it to replace the current welfare system, because like we've displayed here multiple times, the holes that in the net that people fall through. But go ahead, Chandler. I know you're on a VAT.
Yeah. Speaking of those holes, I'm actually talking about a problem there with the VAT system, and that it's applied at the point of transaction along the pipeline, and it actually requires more monitoring. So I hear you. That's actually a problem that I disagree about the VAT on. So there's another. It accomplishes the same thing, and we can actually replace the corporate income tax with this, which is great because it would plug a lot of holes. But a gross receipts tax, which taxes gross revenue for the company regardless of its source at the end of the fiscal cycle, so that everything is accounted for at the end and it wouldn't require as much extensive monitoring along the way. And it would also plug in all the holes and loopholes that people have put into the income and corporate income taxes. So I think that would be a much better solution.
I like that. I'm going to have to look into that because Chandler, that's the first time I'm hearing about this. And now, guess what? I'm going to go on a search and destroy mission all over Google later on tonight.
That's two of us that are going to do that now. So that's a great idea to go on the gross revenue because you capture everything there. All the sales are right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually kind of genius. Just going to say it. I would like it to be where we just tax corporations and not people, you know. I would like you to keep all of your paycheck all the time.
Well, yeah, except you have to have an income and not be disabled.
Well, right. Yeah. That too. But we'll have the UBI to save you there.
Yeah. Of course. Never mind. Actually, yeah, I was going to get into if you don't want any taxes for individuals. I'm not sure if you've answered this already, but is there any sort of resource sink for richer persons to decrease the gap and promote social cohesion within that sort of framework? I have an idea for that too, and that would be like charging part of tuition in public schools, and it would be a progressive sort of level there that doesn't charge poor incomes, but it would charge like only part of the tuition, not a lot. It's not a new tax, but or I guess it is a new tax, but you get what I mean. And it would just go down the line so that it pays for itself and saves us a lot of money with education, as well as promote more of an investment into education by parents and by students and by the community.
You mean kind of like a sliding fee scale kind of thing, Chandler? Is that is that what you mean?
I didn't actually say that, but yeah, I guess that would be the thing. Yeah.
My concern is Mexico has something similar to that, and it's been a big source of issues down there. I'm in Arizona. We're right by the border, and that is one major issue that they've had in Mexico is they don't have a public school system. It is charged a fee, and it is in some areas, sliding fee scale, like you mentioned. But the problem is, if you have no income or very little, if you are below that sliding fee scale, you're going to end up in a position where you may not be able to go to school, or you may have to skip school and start work early to be able to afford to go to school. That's one of the big issues.
What about providing vouchers for the lower incomes then to plug that gap? I mean, it's just an idea. I mean, I can
I
Well,
can see that, but you have to think about the bureaucracy, and again, then you go into
True.
means testing, and
Right,
that
I'm sorry, I
requires
wasn't
an
thinking about
entire
Yeah, I'm
team
sorry.
on the back end that has to be funded to go and check every single person to, really check their finances, their whole background. It
Right,
puts
which would
a
just
lot of
require
stress on the
monitoring.
individual to prove that they're below a certain income.
yeah.
Right. Thank you. I wasn't thinking about
Yeah, you have to
the
prove that
administration.
you're
I'm sorry
poor.
about that.
Yep.
I'm sorry
And
about
that's the problem that we have now.
I'm
where
sorry.
we have a
Get those ideas
situation-
out, man.
We have a situation
Yeah,
where
get them out.
individuals that get to decide who deserves to live and who deserves to suffer and die from poverty, and that's the system that we're trying to unfuck.
Sure.
And it's not going to be easy,
Mhm.
but if we want to go somewhere forward from here, we're gonna have to roll up our sleeves and do it.
Yeah. And that's sort of my general argument against means testing altogether is it puts the responsibility on the individual to be able to prove that they are poor below a certain area, and it tends to be more intrusive into your finances, what you have, how you can do this, and there's usually like a whole line of bureaucracy that you have to go through. So just to get the help, you have to go through this whole lengthy process to be able to get to that point, and that's my biggest concern is that requires a whole lot of extra paperwork. It requires processing time. It requires probably annual testing like SSI and all the others, which I was on before.
Those are all barriers to entry, basically given to us by government. I think
Exactly.
I'm
something that's just
I'm
universally given freely.
mistaken.
Means that if you have a name and a social security number, it is sent to you. No questions asked. That check is coming in the mail.
Just simply for being an American, just being a human being that is an American,
Right. I'm gonna jump off a little bit and let Ariel in, but hey, it was nice.
Really great.
Nice to meet you, Chandler. Look me up at givecongresshale.com.
All right.
Or Facebook, same thing. Give Congress Hail.
Great
I
seeing
hope
you,
you'll
Chandler.
have the
I'm gonna be researching your stuff.
Go ahead.
How do I leave now? How do I get removed?
Oh, you just close the window.
Oh, okay.
Peace.
See the little. Thanks for coming, Chandler. All right, let's get Ariel in here. All right, Kevin.
Hey.
This is our dear friend Ariel the Avalanche.
Yeah.
And
I call myself that because I have no problems expressing some of my stronger opinions, and yeah, it's about coming down hard and fast, and with just the 24-hour news cycle that we live in, it's just like these news anchors just like bullshit. It's like a constant stream of BS coming out of their mouths, and it's so disappointing. And by the way, you guys, I got myself a new chair with
it looks nice
with these extended unemployment benefits, and I decided to buy them somewhere other than Amazon because I just wanted to give like another guy a chance.
Yes.
And it just amazes me how like Brian right here wrote in the comments, we should overhaul our entire education system. We seriously have an education system in the 60s, in the 2020s, and it just amazes me how none of our leaders have noticed this or even give a damn about it. I bet I got the same exact education as a baby boomer got, which is obsolete.
Yeah, I would like to chime in about the thing about UBI is that it's not just for solving the bottom line. It's not just for helping poor people or helping people in a lot of debt. It's also I think what can get overlooked is the amount of entrepreneurship that could really happen. That because like right now it's a little hard. Like you need some form of capital to get going, and it's hard to split your time from like trying to do a day job and then doing your dream job or whatever.
Right.
And so that's exactly what I would like to do. If I had a UBI, I would be dedicating my time full time probably to helping people like Jacqueline and doing the things that I want to do rather than
James the lifesaver, by the way.
yeah.
And I'm not talking hyperbole. James, Angelo, and Ariel and Annette too. Lifesavers. Because I'm going to tell you what. If it wouldn't be for these guys, you'd have never met me tonight. I would have never been able to tell you what neoliberalism was in less than 10 words. And why UBI in less than 5,000 words. Because I'd have been dead. My electric would have been shut off. And my insulin would have spoiled, and I'd be dead. Yeah. And it was, through support and help from, multiple people who are trying to help me unfuck an entire life that had been fucked from, just a horrible spate of bad luck that's too long to get into. But, things like disability and illness, chronic illness are things that are not cheap. And UBI also not only allows you to have that spare money to start a business, it serves as a floor so that if your venture fails and you have limited options available to you based on health issues or a physical disability like being, lost vision or whatever, that it does not mean that you die, that you end up, dumped out on the street and freaking left for dead. It means that you have something. You actually have bootstraps and the damn boots to pull yourself with. I mean, it is. We always talk about about personal responsibility, but then we kneecap people and cripple them. What poverty is in this country, and this is what Peter Timmons, who is an economist from MIT, had to say. It takes for somebody out of deep generational poverty to escape deep poverty, it would require 22 consecutive years of nothing going horribly wrong to set them back. Now, how many people are that lucky? Exactly.
No.
Now, with the whole UBI thing,
I can barely get through a couple of years without something bad happening.
you got at least a floor that no matter what, you always have something to pick yourself up with and dust yourself off with. That's why it also has to be universal, because you know what? I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people really aren't too good at understanding what other people need. In fact, they suck at it.
Okay, if
And
everyone
they
else is
should do me a
talking,
favor and not do anybody no favors because they suck at it. When you think that somebody might not need something, for example, there were people left out of this COVID relief check that, the $1,200 per individual, right? Based on income, based on a tax return income from last year and the year before. Now, here's why that's a problem. Suppose something went horribly wrong in their life, like they got slammed with a major medical shit sandwich and they lost their business and everything because, everything just went wrong all at once right before COVID hit.
Yeah.
According to their 2019 or 2018 tax returns, they're too rich to need help, but yet they're facing eviction and they're queuing up at a damn food bank.
Yeah.
This is why we don't want to do that. We don't want to. We want to make sure that everybody has a floor. Floor means that everybody has something to stand on. Everybody. That this is the farthest you are able to fall. And it does not mean death. Right. It does not mean death from real material deprivation, which is what poverty is, on top of being economic terrorism. Sorry to get on the pulpit, but that's what it is.
I like that term, economic terrorism. That's what the war on poverty has become. It's become that.
The war on poverty morphed into a war on the poor.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
It did.
That's exactly what happened, and it Yeah.
And they're starting to get a small taste of what my life has been as somebody who has survived being orphaned at 12, trafficked into forced prostitution, and then shut out of jobs and housing and medical care my entire life as a result of that. And it wasn't until that record got expunged and my state apologized to me when I was 47. Try getting your first job when you're a 47-year-old woman, buddy. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I'm now 53 and I'm disabled from health problems.
Yeah,
so this is the kind of thing when I say I know what poverty is and what it's not, I'm not speaking through the lens of a paternalistic know-it-all like, sorry, Stephanie Kelton or Bernie Sanders. I'm speaking through somebody who actually lived it, like since forever. And what we have with this opportunity for UBI is to prevent by a factor of at least 90% of other 12-year-old Jacquelines today who end up, for whatever reason, losing their family and ending up homeless and on the streets. We can prevent that.
Yeah.
And we can actually, do something. And where the UBI helps people who never had a chance their entire life, who were kneecapped at the freaking gate. It's a way of saying you're a human being. You don't deserve to suffer and die from poverty. We don't impose that on convicted axe murderers, for God's sake. We provide them with 3 hots and a cot and hot showers and medical and dental care.
Yeah, we treat our prisoners
UBI
better.
is a way of saying to me and every other destitute trafficking survivor in this country that was shut out of not just middle-class jobs, but even the most menial, low-paying jobs because of the stigma that we didn't deserve. And a UBI is one hell of a good way to say America apologizes to you for that.
Right.
Yeah. And I got an interesting idea from what James said, that as an entrepreneur.
I went on a pulpit.
No, that's
shit.
exactly what people need to hear too. That's the whole point of this, different perspectives. So as a entrepreneur myself that got kneecapped during this COVID crisis, because unfortunately I'm a concert promoter and people can't gather in crowds right now.
Me too. That's what my business was, All Hell Promotions. We did band bookings. Yeah.
Oh, yep. So
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah, when you start
I'm a bar manager at a live music venue for my night job, and we haven't worked in months. 3 months I haven't worked.
Yeah, same.
Wow.
Yep. And the thing is, so that when you're starting a business, you have to rely on investors, because no bank is going to give you a startup loan at all. If you are in the startup phase, no bank can actually touch you.
Right.
So that creates a new problem. Now, one interesting thing about UBI being universal is investors right now are not investing in anything. They're too afraid to put money into any venture that they could.
They're trading options.
Right. Yeah, because that's where all the money from the COVID thing went, is to the
not all. A smart trader actually keeps enough of her fucking powder dry for the big one when it happens. 2 big calls and
So if everyone is getting a UBI, that also means that potential investors are investing in entrepreneurs, and it means that entrepreneurs can also bootstrap their own businesses.
Yep.
Because it gives that opportunity where it's basically recession-proof and it's pandemic-proof. Where if your business happens to go south, at least you know that your employees aren't going to, starve. Exactly. And it also means that opportunities that you might be able to retool specifically to help your customers and still provide quality, care and everything. You have the resources to be able to do that. Whereas if you don't know if your customers are coming back after this because they're taking on huge amounts of credit card debt, your business is taking on huge amounts of credit card debt, you don't know if your business is going to stay afloat over the next few months.
Right.
So that also creates a certain level of certainty in the market where the market isn't afraid to crash because it knows, okay, the customers will come back. They have the money to be able to come back. I don't have to worry about my customers, disappearing and not being able to come back. And then I'm not straddled with all this debt where I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay this off because I don't know if I'm going to have customers.
Right.
Or how long it's going to be for me to get my customers back. So it kind of helps on multiple levels.
Right. And when you're in desperation, you're not really at your best. And that's what happens when you're as an entrepreneur, your entrepreneurship has a lot of risk associated to it. Same with artists and creatives, there's a lot of risk. And if you're trying to if you're worried about am I going to have my basic necessities met, then you're not really thinking about the creativity or the problem solving. You're just thinking about how to survive.
Yeah.
And that's taking away a lot of energy for something better.
Seriously, why are we talking about surviving in 2020? You would think we would have solved that problem by now. We have farmers throwing away their extra food. We've landed people on the moon. How stupid, brain dead, incompetent, and worthless are idiot leaders. And that's why they call me
Well, it's well earned and all through.
I miss you, Errol. It's so good.
You're absolutely right, though. I mean,
they deserve a roasting.
It's so frustrating that you and I can see the problem and government can't or won't fix it. They probably do see the problem, but won't fix it. And that's kind of where we got to.
Right.
We got to take on. This is one of the things I like to say is that we need to replace government with community. Replace government with community. If you see a government function that's failing, start volunteering on the private side to fix that problem. Because I promise you, private side volunteerists solve problems much more efficiently than government.
And if we talked about community. Oh, you want to? Let me just say this: we need more community-based education, because this chair that I just got actually came to me in pieces. And I got the screws and stuff, and I looked at the schematics, and I put this whole chair together from scratch. At first, it was a little frustrating, but then little by little, it got fun. It's ooh, this is interesting. This goes to here, and I screw this thing in here and there. And then when I saw this whole chair, and then I'm like, I made this with my own hands. I made this with my mind, my hands. It was such a great feeling. Hey, I created something. I made something. Our idiot schools, our stupid schools, it's all theoretical. You don't create anything. You don't make anything. Creating things, making things, being creative, it feels like magic. Memorizing and regurgitating have gotten me nowhere in life. So we need some kind of community-based education where we learn what can we create, whether it's digital, whether it's a business, whether it's a structure, a building, something. We come out of these schools for 12 years with these imbeciles with none of that stuff.
Well, you know how we can get that? It would be a lot easier if we had UBI. Then there'll be a lot more volunteers.
Well, there it is. There it is. And then we don't have to think we create something, but we've spent our last penny, so we'll never be able to create anything ever again.
We need to revamp education completely. One of the things that I like to pull up is that the Constitution does not promise an education. So why do we have a Department of Education that steals money from local people to just funnel it through a bureaucracy and then somewhat send it back with mandates.
And what Jacqueline went to university with a STEM degree. So I remember I was told in university, if I get good grades and work hard and all that shit that these assholes told me, I would have like a job that makes $1 million in my lifetime. Well, that didn't happen, assholes. Where's my refund? It's like,
well, same with me. I got 2 degrees in IT, which is what they tell you is the biggest job.
What do these people who teach us have a degree in? Being incompetent?
In physics, I was only 6 credits away from a double major.
Right.
Wow.
Okay. You know how many doors of opportunity my degree opened for me? Exactly 0.
Same here.
For me when I met the best friends in the whole world in Yang Gang.
Yep. My degree.
So my education was short and sweet. I mean, pretty short. It was, I went to cosmetology school, but later I ended up, I've been an educator. I've been an entertainer. We did hair shows in front of like thousands of people and stuff. And I've been in management, administration, general management, and then I have owned 3 salons of my own. I owned a salon when I got diagnosed with my cancer, and all of that. So like that happened. But I also got evicted from the space that I was renting because I fell behind on my rent because I was sick, because I had cancer and didn't know it. And then, so I lost my business. I lost my livelihood, like in a matter of boom. It was just done. Like I got the eviction notice and I had to leave that day. That day, we went and got a U-Haul, and one person came and helped me and my mom because my husband was a truck driver out on the road. One friend came and helped me and my mom, my elderly mom, load up my salon and put as much as we could in the U-Haul, and we went and bought a storage unit that day, or rented a storage unit.
Jeez, like
so just in a matter of boom, your life is over.
Just upside
and that's
down.
where UBI
the
comes
best
in.
Education that I ever got was through direct experience. I mean, that's the way it happens. Like when I decided to go hosteling, I never traveled alone in my life, but I just like filled up a backpack, researched the plane tickets and stuff, and then like reserved, and then I got there and I just talked to you, and then I just did like some scouting, like where some interesting locations to go, and I just went at it, and I'm like, damn, like I'm learning so much, and I don't need a notepad. I don't need some boring person lecturing me. I don't need, and then you would think, like, with all this education that we do get, we'd learn about controlling a budget, or like how much something's gonna cost, or how much money we make when we work, and like all this practical stuff. No, but like, hey, at least I know Shakespeare, and no employer ever asked me for any like thing. No employer has ever asked me for anything that they say that you need, and it's like, or like under what rock do we find these people to like be our leaders and educate us, and in what cereal box do they get their credentials out of?
If that cereal box would be standardized testing. We need to get rid of standardized testing. We need to give the classroom back. Give the classrooms back to the teachers and the parents, and let them decide what the curriculum is. What we don't have going on right now is, like you just said, you learned more from putting that chair together and got more out of it than because you actually physically did it. What if the teacher had the power to create the curriculum for each of the individual students? Maybe you have one student that's really artistic, so you channel all of your energy of teaching her basics through her art. Or you have one that's mechanically inclined, so you teach him about math and science through his mechanical, like through a robot program where he's
like screenwriting,
right? Or maybe you've got one that's perfectly good, that's good at English and can write and is good at expressing themselves on paper. Then you teach that student, but the teachers don't have that power right now because they're forced to literally teach to this test, because they're graded on how those students do on the
Why
test.
don't we put our politicians in the classroom and force them to
They
do all
couldn't
this
pass
shit?
that test.
Right? Yeah, yeah. So if you think Trump could ever pass a standardized test? You know, just yesterday he said hustery. He said HUSTROY. It's like we have this dumbass, and it's like, okay, like, they don't even keep these idiots don't even keep themselves to the same standards that they want to keep like a 13-year-old through.
Right.
Shame on these morons.
You want to know how things really got out of hand with the education? And Ariel and Kevin, you want to know why teachers have to teach to a crappy test? Because of an unfunded mandate known as No Child Left Behind.
Exactly.
Okay. And
That thing
what
screwed
ended up
everybody.
happening is that most kids got left behind.
Yeah. Exactly. That's my point, is that we need to get rid of the standardized testing.
They just call it every child left behind.
Exactly. They might as well have done that.
It's like every child might as well put their head between their knees and kiss their own behind, because that's pretty much what happened.
Right, yeah.
That's why libertarians advocate for homeschooling.
Yeah,
libertarians.
I would like
or just have like a community center that you just repurpose into, like, because not everybody has parents who can take them places and who know a lot of things, but just have a place in the community where it's like, hey, I'm a guy who just likes to have some fun with some robots. This is a place in my community, and I like to invite someone. Hey, there you go.
Exactly.
Like, it's not rocket science.
I
You know,
would like
it just
to
takes a
work
little
as
bit of ingenuity.
teacher and teach financial literacy and teach things like the velocity of money and direction. That's why directional derivatives comprise the Black-Scholes formula.
Yeah, here's an idea.
I would love to teach things that you can actually take,
right,
and use, and say, okay, this is something that I can use in my daily life, you know, and teach other stuff like the art of cord waning. Do you know what a cord wainer is? Most people don't know what that is. Come on, you know what it is. Yang
I have
Yang,
no idea.
Together.
that's the person who makes shoes.
A cord. Say it again.
Cord wainer.
Cord wainer makes shoes. How cool. Okay, I learned something new.
And I just had an idea, like, I was always wondering, like, how about, like, every month or maybe even every 2 weeks, like, take a damn kid to, like, a store and just let them talk to the store owner. Like, hey, how do you get your customers? Like, what do you do with your money? How do you balance, you know, all the things that you have to pay for? Like, just 1 week of that instead of a year of learning some, like, random trivial bullshit that you have to memorize. Like, just imagine the possibilities.
Right.
You know, it's like I tell people. In fact, I was on another show. I was interviewed by Russ, Grassroots Yang Gang, known as broke folk. I can't say that.
Broke folk vote.
The broke
folk vote.
Yeah. And it's like people just about shit their pants when I told them, I didn't learn anything about options trading in college. I learned it while I was being trafficked as a prepubescent homeless youth.
I mean, the only thing I really learned from classes is how stupid classes are.
Commodities trading, futures trading, from when we had the things printed in the newspaper and dollars were represented as fractions. You didn't have online accounts. You didn't have the internet. You actually had to call a floor broker at the CBOE and place a trade to buy a futures contract for soybeans or coffee or whatever the fuck. And my traffickers, who had to answer to some mafia capos from the Philadelphia, you know, the Angelo Bruno's outfit, okay? And these guys, for whatever reason, they took a shine to me, and they kind of took me under their wing because the trade that I recommended worked out. I was 14 years old, right? And they said, hey, you know, what do you think is going to win? Coffee? What do you think is going to be a good win next week? Coffee or soybeans? And I'm like, I don't know what soybeans are, but everybody drinks coffee. And that trade ended up paying off. And that opened my eyes because these guys ran a bookmaking operation. And I didn't understand, to save my life, why betting on coffee or soybeans was legal. But taking bets on the Philadelphia Flyers was not. This did not compute. So later on, fast forward when I get to college and the internet started to become a thing. And one of the people that I was tutoring, who was a classmate, because part of my student aid package was working as a peer tutor. And this fella was really having problems grokking abstract algebra. He couldn't get his head around abelian groups very well. He was having difficulty. And I saw him trading on the computer in the computer lab. And I was like,
imagine that.
I looked at that and I said, shit, I know how to trade. And I knew how to trade without a fucking computer. I mean, I remember the days where I had to draw the charts by hand. Mapping out the points. Oh, yeah. And I seriously thought about taking my student loan check for my final semester and blowing it off and throwing it in a trading account, because it's like I was confident and I knew how to trade. And this was like the technology as it came along made it easier, made it more complicated in some ways, but a lot easier than in others. I don't have to spend hours plotting charts on paper and have literally the entire living room covered in a blizzard of graph paper with hand-drawn points and lines like you did in the old days. So, I mean, I actually thought about it. I sat there and it was like the last temptation of Christ, man. I'm telling you. I was like, oh, man. I mean, I was really feeling it, too. I was like really feeling it.
I can do this.
Because it's, oh, man. Because it's like I saw what dude was doing. And when you are a math major in pure math, you tend to be good at picking out patterns. And that's what a lot of it is picking out patterns and discipline and knowing when to cut losses. It's like you have firm rules as a trader and they all vary. Every trader's unique. And I seriously thought, man, should I even bother with going through my last semester? Because I'm from poverty. I have a past that I'm ashamed that I was made to feel ashamed of and blamed for, even though it wasn't my fault.
Right.
And it's like, I probably won't get a chance for a job. I'm not one of the people that these upper middle class institutions like universities particularly welcome. But fucking A, I'm looking at $2,600 from Sally Mae. I'm going, I could trade this bitch up into 10 grand in 6 months. Get the fuck and it's like, nah, I can't do that, because sure as shit, if I do that and something don't work out, some sanctimonious, self-righteous asshole is going to say, now, Jacqueline, you didn't do the right thing. You didn't get your degree. You didn't complete your degree. If you would have just stuck it out, you only had one semester left, you would have had your degree and you would have had a whole world of job opportunities open for you. Of course, we now know that never happened.
It was a lie. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, Randy's saying I'm speaking his language. Yeah, bud. All right.
Yeah. I don't even know why they don't get in trouble for them. I mean, if you're going to promise people a world of opportunities and it really doesn't materialize, what other business owner can do shit like this? What other person can sell you a car and then let's say I bought a car and I drove it home and then it broke down on the freeway and then I had to call AAA and then they said, well, you know what? Like, you just didn't try hard enough with our broken car. Like you just didn't do your magic to just somehow fix it because our car broke down. It's like, I'm suing you, you piece of crap. But when it comes to our schools, we're like, leave them alone. It's you.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah, it's called that argument don't wash. It's kind of like, why is betting on coffee legal, but betting on the Philadelphia Flyers ain't?
Yeah. If any like business owner told you something about a product and that wasn't there, they'd say, okay, this is fraudulent. With the universities, not only it like doesn't work, but they raise their prices every year. So it's like, okay, so not only is your product broken, but you're raising the price for a broken product every single year. In what world does that make sense? But somehow, like, the schooling system has become America's golden calf that we worship, and we don't even know why. And just because it has the word education, is it? Education is a lot of things. It's not just some sitting in a class with a paper in front of you with some person lecturing you.
Right. Education is not a black box, but that's how we like to view it.
No.
amongst
They've turned
Right.
what I said earlier.
Wait, I want to add something real quick.
Go ahead.
So going back to, you guys were talking earlier about like the education, like the public school education and stuff like that. And I didn't get a chance to get the word in, but now's a good enough time. Anyway, the best classes that I took in high school were, one was exploring popular literature. And that meant that we were free to choose anything at all in the library, or like watch a video or whatever, you know, like we could watch a video of like Huckleberry Finn or something like that. And then, so we were free to choose, and that was one of the best classes ever. I got like an honors A+ in that class. And I chose to read as many Stephen King books as I could in that year, because my teacher hated Stephen King, and he was a super intelligent guy, really smart guy. And so he hated Stephen King, and he's like, I accept this challenge, you know, like if you can prove to me that Stephen King is like a legitimate author. And I noticed that, anyway, whatever, I got an A+ in that class. I did very well. And then the other really great class I had was it was called Consumer Skills. So I failed all my math classes except geometry. I think I got about a C in geometry, and geometry is actually used quite a bit in cosmetology. For you need to know shapes and angles. You need to know a 45-degree angle or a 90-degree angle, or I mean 90 is straight out, or like a 180-degree angle. All of those different degrees of elevation give you a different end result. So you have to use geometry in hair cutting and stuff. So that served me well later in life. But this other class, it was for the dumb kids, you know, it was called Consumer Skills. And they taught you how to like fill out a job application, how to balance a checkbook. This is all pre-online checking and stuff, you know,
Annette,
so we all had to like balance an actual checkbook. What?
Annette, you called out the class for the dumb kids. And I just want to stress on something. That's something that the smart kids aren't taught today.
Right.
So those so-called dumb kids back then
Yeah.
are 90 million miles
It
ahead.
was considered a remedial class. It was considered like a remedial class. No, it was the best class ever.
The terrible
like
thing is this:
you learn how to like
that
figure out how many gallons of paint would it take.
I've come
to
from
paint this room, or how many tiles.
I came from like relative privilege. So the thing is that they already know that our parents already kind of like teach us all this stuff in like the remedial classes. But even speaking as like a semi-privileged, I wouldn't call myself fully privileged person growing up, I wanted to know those things, but they were always telling me that like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Like, worry about it later. You know, you'll have all the time to think about it when you get older. When you get older, you think about it. When you get older, you'll think about it. Then when I finally got older, you know what those idiots told me? Why don't you know this by now? You stupid bastards. You idiots. You...
Ariel the owl.
I feel you, man. I feel you.
So Kevin, you have to speak up when you are ready to check out. You got to say it, okay? Because this group of people right here can talk for hours.
Yeah. All right, so I've been here 3 hours, so I think it's a good time to call.
Yeah, dude, it's a long time. Yeah,
but I will. I'm going to take all the information.
I'd like to hear James say something.
Oh, I'm I don't really have too much.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
All right, let Kevin finish. Here, let me put Kevin's information back up again.
Yeah. The Twitter and the Facebook are all Give Congress Hale. So is the website, givecongresshale.com. Those are actually my personal ones. The Twitter's the All Hail is my personal one, which is fine. You can find me there as well. That's my big thing is apathy. The non-voters outnumber the voters. So that's the big push for my campaign is to get them to show up and vote. Because that's the only way I'm going to win. I'm not going to convince very many Republicans to vote for me. I'm not going to convince very many Democrats, but I already know how many votes they're going to have so, because of the gerrymandering. Pretty much guarantees that the Republican will have about 135,000 votes. The Democrat will end up with 75. She might end up with 80,000. She's a really good campaigner. But the gerrymandering pretty much has been that way since 96. The non-voters outnumber the voters in my district. There's 342,000 non-voters and only 210,000 people did vote. So that's my push is that if you want a third party in this country, and apparently a lot of you do because you're not voting for either of the other two parties, you can have it. Just show up and vote for the third party, whether that be libertarian, green, or constitutional. It doesn't matter. The two old parties are what's broken with our country right now.
We're thinking of creating like a humanity first parties.
It's not just a matter of parties; it's a matter of policy.
Yeah, and
I give zero fucks about labels. Seriously, I give zero fucks about labels.
Well, that's the problem in our country is that most people only identify with a party and they're not looking at the principles, or even worse, they're not even looking at the results of the legislation, which is in opposition of what their rhetoric is, especially with the Republicans. Their rhetoric is smaller government, less spending, but that's not what they delivered. Even when we gave them all of the power, that's not what they delivered.
They like big government as long as big government.
So, Kevin, I would like to. That was one thing that I really wanted to touch on today. Was third party. Let me finish.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to say that is one thing that I really wanted to touch on today, but we had so much other stuff to talk about. So I would like to invite you to come back on at another time, and I would really like to delve into like third party voting. Like you have all these numbers in your head that I don't have. So you seem to be a really good source about that, because there are many of us out in the Yang Gang that's the way that we're looking, you know?
Right.
So like if you can get the Yang Gang on board with the third party,
that would help us. That would so help us so much. Yeah. Here's the deal. Having a strong third party makes sure that you have someone to keep the other two parties in check. That's not what's happening right now. The other two parties are not checking each other. You know, that's just not what's happening. So in order to do that, in order to force that, you get a strong third party in there, and all of a sudden they all go back to their real principles. Because I'll be able to hold them accountable to that. Like civil liberties. Democrats have been in control of Minnesota or Minneapolis, where George Floyd died, for 47 years. If they were really about civil liberties, they would have got rid of this cop a long time ago. Okay? They didn't deliver. So, and the same thing with Republicans. You say you're about smaller government and spending less, but you passed the omnibus bill in 2017. You didn't do what you promised. So that's what a third party does, is it allows us, as we the people, to hold them accountable. They've had control of this thing for over 150 years, and they've failed to deliver on one promise: freedom for all, opportunity for all. They have failed us in delivering that. And you just have to look at the streets burning to understand that that's what's happened. And that's why I'm running, you know, because I want to hold both parties accountable to their own rhetoric. And that's what I would do.
That's beautiful.
My pitch. That's my pitch. That's the value proposition.
Common sense. Yeah.
Yeah, common sense.
So I would, if I lived in Texas, I would vote for you in a split second. Dude. I would. You would have my vote. So I followed you on Twitter today, and so I didn't follow the other. I only followed the All Hail one. So
That's fine.
I need to
That's
find
my
your
personal one. I share both my political.
I like Kevin, but I got to tell you,
right on.
I'm a little spoiled with Andrew Yang. For any politician or potential politician,
I know, but
we got to have his platform. They have got to be willing to commit to at least 90% of his platform. UBI first and foremost.
So, yep. So our advice to you is to go down the rabbit hole of Andrew Yang on YouTube. Go back and look at some older videos, some of his longer ones. Any of us would be happy to recommend specific videos. If you want to know his thoughts on healthcare, the AARP one in Des Moines, that's the one. If you want to know like which town hall or which interview was the one that like clicked us,
right?
Which is the one that sold us. Like for me, it's one line at the very end of the Lawrence Lessig town hall in New Hampshire. And his voice cracked a little bit. And like I saw his humanity in that. And I just saw it in you too, Kevin. I did. I just saw it in you too, just a second ago. And I just got goosebumps saying it. Like, you know, like you gotta be able to see the humanity in people, like no more lesser of two evils. Like, how about we vote for humanity? You know? So I encourage you to dig deeper into Yang and the Yang Gang and be more active with us.
I will. I'm certainly going
to
delve into the UBI much more deeply because, like I said, when I came in here today, I barely had a surface knowledge of it. So thank you for hearing my point of view on it. And I love that you gave me yours. And I will definitely delve into it because I feel like I owe it to you to understand where you're coming from.
There's also something you owe to
that's great.
And that is you owe yourself.
Yeah. I have to be open to all ideas.
I wrote an excellent treatise on what neoliberalism is because I can tell you, and you have my sympathy for this. You know that you're a libertarian, you're going to get a lot of bullshit thrown at you, like, "Oh, you support neoliberalism, and that's what's wrong with this country." And I mean, guess what? If you need,
I have to be open to all ideas.
Grenades. I wrote an excellent treatise on what neoliberalism is because I can tell you, I'll give you my articles and you can read through them. You know that you're a libertarian. To you. Bullshit thrown at you, like, "Oh, you support neoliberalism, and that's what's wrong with this." Because most people that use that word, they use that word, but it's something that they don't understand what it means.
You're echoing. Okay.
I think somebody has their thing on. Can everybody else mute their mic except Declan?
I can't.
I think it was from Jimothy.
What?
Or Kevin.
What I was saying was that there are people that throw words around and they don't understand what those words mean. And before I kind of toddled off of the Bernie plantation and burned my commie card, but not my radical feminist card. So just be aware. Yeah. My bark is actually worse than my bite, though. I don't bite hard. My husband likes it. Oh, wait a minute. TMI. But all kidding aside, I would love to give you, send you a copy of the treatises that I wrote on neoliberalism that breaks it down so that when you get thrown, because you're going to get subjected to a lot of crapola being thrown at you by people who want to use words without knowing what they mean. And I defined neoliberalism very well because I had to do it for the so-called real progressive guys because they didn't know, they didn't understand. Hell, they didn't even really understand socialism either. I mean, I had to explain that to them too, And this is from a former Trotskyite, now left libertarian.
Oh no!
So yeah, if you need anything like that, I would be glad to share it with you. Please look at Yang's website.
I will.
Look at his policies and look at what we've been saying about UBI. Because what we really need to do to solve these problems is we need to do the one thing we haven't done, except argue about why we couldn't do it.
Right.
Okay. And, you know, and just going around in circles, I feel like our political atmosphere, our political culture is like a bunch of 7-year-olds, and they're all looking at a pile of poop in the middle of the floor, and they're stepping in and poking it with their fingers and going, mommy, look at the poop on the floor, look at the poop. And you want to say, hey, everybody, there's this thing called a turlet. Why don't we go learn how to use the turlet, okay? Instead of playing in the shit.
Right.
That is our political
All right.
atmosphere that we're trying to correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I put my email.
All right. So Kevin,
I put my email.
yeah, I added that to the.
Yeah, just if you want to send.
I added that to the banner there.
All right, cool, awesome. Yeah, that's my email address.
There it is.
Email.
I'm
Thank you
get
guys for having me.
right now, so that way you can read them. So when somebody accuses you of supporting neoliberalism, you can
Put it back in their face.
Yeah, you can educate them.
That's a lot of my job right now is educating people on the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's let you go. You're going to come back and see us another time.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much. You took it like a champ, dude. Like, I am so proud of you. It's awesome.
You have to have rhino skin, and you have to have an open mind.
I was just about to say that before you said it. That's what we need, an open mind. We don't need any more like just instantaneous hate when a differing opinion comes up.
Exactly. I don't have all the answers. I'm not that smart. Okay, so I need to be open to other answers, even if they're not from me. I don't care, as long as we all get freer, more opportunity, and hopefully some more money in our paycheck.
Life becomes enjoyable.
Dude, you are so yang gang. You just don't even know it. You're yang gang and don't know
You might be libertarian and you don't know it.
I know. I think I am libertarian, honestly. So, because I agreed with every single thing you said today. Every single thing.
Randy said thanks on Facebook. Randy, thank you for tuning in and adding to the conversation, and everybody that added to the conversation, especially Dr. Salter, former mayor of Palestine, who I am.
Yes, let's put hers up.
Against Lance Gooding. So thank you very much for all of you and your time, and I look forward to getting back with you and getting some research done on UBI.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And as always,
all right, take care, Kevin.
Peace,
care.
Love, liberty.
Right on.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy politicking.
All right. So, does anybody have? Okay. No final words. Just bye, everybody. You want me to end it?
Yeah, I think I'm good. Okay.
All right then. Peace, everybody. Thanks for all those that hung out for as long as you did. This was 3 hours and 8 minutes. This is a marathon broadcast for us, and I'm proud of all of us, like sticking together like we are, and remaining active, and
then I
like
did
just
want to
not
say,
giving up the fight.
like name me one other presidential campaign except for maybe Sanders that when their person suspended, they stuck together. None of them. You know, that makes us special. Like it was more than just a presidential run.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder, are there other supporters of other candidates that do what we do right here? Because, you know, like I consider all of you family at this point in life.
Right.
And like I can't imagine life without you people now.
Like could you imagine like
that would really suck.
The McConnell crew or some bullshit like that, like would never exist. Like,
no.
Right?
Yeah. Crew?
I'm gonna share with you guys some links in the chat for everybody to grab the same things on neoliberalism, because a lot of people in Yang Gang are getting unfairly attacked with the same crapola.
Right.
So I'm going to share this with everybody. Please grab the links. It's a 2-part article.
I think
what is it?
like the Trump people, even themselves, they're like dissolving, because if you could see when Trump came back from that rally, you could see like his face never looked like that. I've never seen his face looking like that, like
Yeah.
that look of like depression, and he was just defeated coming off that helicopter, and it was like,
It was
I think,
broken.
yeah, he was like broken, but I think like they're as they go down, like we're going up, like this, and it's good news. It's good news, you know. Yeah. I'm actually
For
optimistic
sure.
about the future. I'm very optimistic, because this is just gonna grow. Like there's nowhere we can go but up. And for like the regular parties, they've been up. Now they're going down. They're going down pretty fast.
Oh yeah, they're going down like the Titanic. They are sinking at a rate that is approaching terminal velocity.
Well, the sooner the better.
They are seriously sinking.
Hopefully they hit rock bottom and they never come back up.
I just sent this in the email to Kevin, and I put it in the chats. 2-part article. Each one has a link. It's in my Google Drive. Grab it.
Yep. I'm doing it, and I'm putting it in the comments.
With you. That was written by my formerly solid leftist self. So if somebody tries to argue with you guys about it, you know, you can say, hey, got this from a ex-commie.
Nice.
Who is actually now proudly left-leaning libertarian and part of Yang Gang. And I don't even like using that label, because you know what? I care about how someone treats the least of these, what their policies are for the least of these. You know, that is the true barometer of any society. The labels and all that other stuff, that's fluff. That's fluff. You know, I care about.
It's not about labels.
I mean, you know what? It's like when I first met James, I didn't say, hey, who did you vote for in 2016? We were talking about everything from coding to learning trading to, you know, how we could put together a plan that I could use my skills and knowledge to get, you know, economically, after I get helped up on my feet, get stabilized, and actually build my business with teaching trading through my Patreon. To people who have $50 a month or more pledges, they get access to screencasts and maybe weekly or monthly live hangouts where people can ask any trading question they want to. And I can pop open the Thinkorswim and share it and go through the whole thing for people.
I think that's the beauty of like action taking instead of just talking about things, because when Yang remember what was going on in New York when they want to block the vote, and then Yang and Herzog came in and they're like, you're not doing that, and they put a stop to it, and they didn't just complain about it, they did something. Like
Andrew Yang solved more problems by accident in the last 10 weeks than anybody sitting in government right now solved in the past 40 years.
Yeah, just bunch of.
You know, I mean,
retards.
He didn't wait for government to decide to give us UBI. He started Humanity Forward, and he has, you know, which, by the way, was the only charity that ever helped me out with exactly what I needed and saved my life. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been able to buy food with the shutdown, because, you know, no car. Food stamps, EBT card not accepted on Instacart.
Right. And once like we do get power, hopefully soon, we'll make sure things never go back to the way they were, because to the way things were just like disgusting, cruel, barbaric, insane, idiotic. And we're gonna say like that ends.
It's like I was telling James when we were talking a little bit, I shared a little bit that I don't share too much about. I usually don't go into too much detail about what I experienced while I was being trafficked, except I will bring up that that's where I got exposed to trading commodities, on futures on commodities. But there was something else that I was talking about with James just the other night. And that is this girl who was my age who taught me how to survive on the streets because I didn't know how. I was this awkward, shy, tomboyish, Orthodox Jewish kid who was a pain in the ass who pissed off all the adults by asking the tough questions adults don't like to hear. And Shannon taught me how to survive because I didn't even know how to fight. I didn't know nothing. And Shannon had her first prostitution arrest. She was a traffic victim. She was 9 years old. And I'm going to tell you how she got arrested for prostitution at age 9 back in 1976. Because I was 9 in 1976. That's what I know. Her mother was boyfriended into it by a Romeo pimp. Mom was a single mom, not getting any child support, met Mr. Wonderful. And Mr. Wonderful basically, to talk street, put her out on the host roll. And the mom did not make her quota one night. Pimp threw her out of a third-floor window and left her quadriplegic. And back in 1976, medical technology was not what it is today. So if you ended up being a quadriplegic, you ended up dying from your injuries very shortly after. So what happened was, after that happened to Shannon's mom, the Romeo pimp got custody of Shannon. He was her ipso facto legal guardian. And you know what he did to 9-year-old Shannon? Put her out on the host roll. Now, you had a bureaucracy of adults, from judges to probation officers to district attorneys, that you could not in any way. I don't give a shit if you wanted to stretch the truth like a mosquito's ass over a sugar bowl, okay, which is what trying to budget in poverty is like. You're trying to stretch a mosquito's ass over a sugar bowl. You couldn't stretch the goddamn truth and say that 9-year-old child should be held culpable and stigmatized with prostitution arrest, and then fined and forced to go out and prostitute even more to make money to pay the fines and the court costs. And James was floored when I'm telling him about this, about 9-year-old Shannon. And I'm like, yeah, human trafficking is only now getting attention, but it was a problem back then. And you had this system, a legal system that turned a blind eye. It's like you had all these adults, all these educated adults. We're talking about people with law degrees, for God's sake, judges and lawyers. All right. We're talking about probation officers who had to have at least a bachelor's degree. We're talking about district attorneys, all these adults. There was no reason for the system actually served as Shannon's backup trafficker, as it had with so many of us that survived that hell. Because every time we caught an arrest, we had to go out and get, well, you know what we had to do to get money to pay them. And that's on top of what we had to pay our traffickers. Because if we didn't make our quota, we got our asses beat within an inch of our lives. And then this society says, we didn't know this was a problem. We didn't know this was going on. And it's like, you didn't? Well, I'm going to tell you how everybody knew this was going on. There was a movie called Taxi Driver starring Robert De Niro and Jodie Foster when Jodie Foster was 12. Jodie Foster was 12 a few years before I turned 12 and ended up orphaned and trafficked. And when Jodie Foster was auditioning for the role of Iris in Taxi Driver, which Iris was a child sex trafficking victim, okay? We used to be called prostitutes, child prostitutes. When Jodie Foster had to audition for that role, they had the producers and the directors of the movie had to get her parents' permission. And also, as a stipulation, she had to get trauma therapy and counseling to cope with the trauma of just learning how to play the role of a sex trafficked youth. Now, she also had to learn the behaviors and the speech on how we talk. Guess what they did? They somehow miraculously found a child sex trafficking victim who was the same age as Jodie Foster to actually teach her how to walk and talk and how to eat the foods that thrown away, homeless, underage trafficking victims eat, and the violence that we're subjected to. They actually somehow knew where to find one. Gee, but nobody knew that human trafficking existed. And that is how Jodie Foster had to learn how to play the role of Iris. And she had to undergo therapy just from the trauma of learning enough to play a role in a movie. Imagine how it is for those of us who didn't have the privilege of being able to walk away and say, okay, it wasn't playing a role for us. And, this country acted like everybody was stuck on stupid. Well, you had a system that amassed a stigmatizing criminal record, yay thick, against another girl my age since she was 9. Any other 9-year-old child that an adult pays to have sex with, that adult gets the book thrown at them and goes to jail for child rape, for pedophilia, and the child does not get criminally prosecuted. The only exception is poor, marginalized, underage kids, mostly girls, who are thrown away into prostitution and money is exchanged hands. That the victims don't get to keep, the traffickers get it all. So I don't buy it when people say, well, we have a good system. It just needs a little few tweaks. No. We need to.
The system is, like you said, it's complete shit. I'm just gonna end on something here, like when I already said it. It's like Jordan Peterson says that people need to clean their room. Our leaders have been rolling around in their own shit, sucking each other's genitals and smearing their crap all over the wall. It's like
kids pointing to the poop in the middle of the floor, going, Mommy, there's a turd on the floor. And you're like saying, okay, now why don't you guys come to the bathroom and we'll learn how to use the toilet.
Yeah.
And you can't get them away from the toilet.
Depressing to think about.
We have a last minute question here.
Randy.
Because it legalizes the people who victimize me, the men who use their male privilege and money to buy rape tickets, to coerce unwanted sex that I wasn't even legally able to consent to, even if I would have wanted to. And it legalizes people like pimps and turns them into, quote, respectable businessmen. I'll tell you what I do support. I do support removing any criminal penalty from the mostly women and girls who are in prostitution. But I do not support legalizing pimps.
Yeah.
That I know. And I need to apologize for that.
Yeah.
Don't need to. Anyway, I gotta jump off. Gotta watch some more videos, but it's been fun. Jim, where are you from? I don't think we've really ever met.
Yeah, you can call me James. I needed a nickname.
Oh, okay. where are you from?
I'm from Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, how about you?
Los Angeles, California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I look forward to seeing you some more. I think we're both sitting on gaming chairs.
Oh yeah, I got this from my work. They gave us a COVID relief budget to work from home. So
nice.
What the same chair?
I don't know if it's the same chair.
It's not the same one. It's his kind of like folds out like this, but you can see mine. Yeah. It's the same kind of style. Yeah. What's your work?
I'm sitting here on a fake leather boss ass chair.
Yeah, I work at Indeed. Indeed, the job searching website.
Oh, Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm using them. Okay, so if I got any questions about Indeed, I'll reach out to you.
Yeah. So our motto is we help people get jobs, and apparently that's what I'm doing both at work and outside of work. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Can you drop? Wait. Let me just get in contact with you on Facebook. So.
My water heat on my desk.
What's your last name?
Zhang. Yeah, Zhang. Here, we can.
ZHENG.
ZHANG, but there's a lot of James Zangs, so It's a James Z. I think it was like James Z3.
James Z3.
Yeah, I think that's the one. That's me.
Okay, let me check if that
Oh,
brings you.
yeah,
Oh
James.
yeah. I know it obviously because it says we have 46 mutual friends. Oh, seems like we already are friends.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, just
I guess it's one of those things where you randomly just click like friend to anyone who's like part of the Yang movement and they just accept, but you really don't know who they are. So yeah, cool. Well, anyway, gotta go, guys. It's been fun.
All right, I'm gonna end this anyway. So peace, everybody. Love, happiness, Yang Gang love, and all that. End with the claw. Gotta end with the claw, dudes.
How you do that?
All right.
How you?
We'll see you guys later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
You just kind of scrunch up your hand like you're squishing something.
I hope I didn't offend your